And now, the starting lineup of your favorite show. At producer, 5'11" from Blanchester, the Cow Killer, Casey McCollister. And comic engineer, standing at 4'8", the pride of the West Side, Elliot Rearing. And your host, weighing 150 pounds, soaking wet, from Hamilton, Ohio, Ace Fowler.
Big day on Chatterbox Sports. Big day. Woke up this morning, checked the old X app. Somebody was up early here at the old Chatterbox offices, tweeted out a graphic. It looked like we have a wall-to-wall coverage of sports. Serious of sports, of course, because it's a very serious sports talk show. And that is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. I'm Trace Fowler. Hope you enjoyed and loved your weekend. Weather was relatively nice. It was mild. Had to put some sweatshirts on. I go around the room. I guess we'll do the old, one thing I was thinking of before I came in, too, really quickly, was that I used to have a job where everybody would huddle up on Mondays. Monday morning, you had to get your cup of coffee and basically sit around the cubicles, and you'd go around the room, and everyone would be like, "What'd you do this weekend?" And you had to care about what everybody else did, and it was just this I would say the word, but we all know what it is. It was just tired. Yeah. And I'm so glad that now I guess I'll say I work at a place where that just doesn't happen. If you want to know what someone did over the weekend and you actually genuinely care, you ask. If you don't care, you don't ask. I actually do genuinely care. I do know what Reed did, which I'll let him tell his fun story because I got a chance to do it last year. But subsequently, we'll ask the producers, the esteemed producers first, how your weekend was.
I had a great weekend. I'm trying to think what I did. On Friday night, I had the Elder Sports Stag.
VIP.
Shout out.
Yeah, how was that?
VIP.
Very important person.
Very important person, yeah. I still think that was a prank, but that's okay. They can do that. It was good. Pat Kelsey was really good. That was a really good speech he gave. By the way, it is fun to see a college basketball coach because he was definitely on edge. This is like their prime recruiting cycle, and him taking like 5 hours out of his day to not focus on recruiting whatsoever. He was definitely on edge from that. But that was a good event. Saturday, I'm going to be honest. I'm forgetting what I did Saturday. I don't know what I did on Saturday. Sunday, we celebrated my dad's birthday.
How do you not know what you did on a full day? In all seriousness.
I don't know honest to God, I'm forgetting what I did on Saturday.
And you sang a beautiful rendition.
Oh, yeah, I did.
The Frank Sinatra.
Saturday, I watched the Reds game. I watched the Reds game with Zach Freese. Wow. Shout out to Zach Freese. That's all I did.
What a cheap out answer that was, but that's fair. Casey?
Yeah, I had a really lazy day on Saturday. I just hung out at the house, rested, recharged the batteries, as we like to say here in the office. Sunday, went to the Reds game. And boy,
almost killed him.
Boy, I was really in a bad spot. The very first inning, I think it was his third or second pitch of the day. He gets crushed in the arm, and I'm just sitting there thinking yep, I'm the jinx. I got to leave now. I got to go. But
I was very concerned. They also didn't have a hit through 6, and that was also a little bit concerning.
That was a bit concerning too, but hey.
But you did it, Casey. You got the win. You got the win.
Came through.
That you did. We have headlines as always. We're going to talk a little NFL draft, and then we'll get to the Reds, maybe preview their series with the Phillies. Evan Maurer is a guy that's in our chat quite a bit. And you know what? Sometimes flowers deserve to be given. And I got to be honest. He took one straight to the chin last year when he put out the post about Nick Castellanos, and their fan base absolutely just ravaged him. I mean, when you talk about a guy getting absolutely drilled on X, he was squaring the targets of everybody that lived and or rooted for a Philadelphia Philly team. And you know what? Since that happened, I'm not sure Castellanos has hit a home run. That's not a bit. That's a genuine statement. I'm not sure they've hit a home run. He might have been the world's worst player, so we'll get into all of that. But before we obviously get into headlines, Reed, you got to do something that I had a chance to do last year, and Casey for that matter. Go over to Bloomington, Indiana, your first time with a little 500. Your experience?
Yeah, it was really cool. Listen, I knew nothing. I'm wearing the shirt. I'm rocking the shirt. It was very cold. You said it was great weather this weekend. I had a very different experience. It was about 40 degrees and windy every single day.
Sounds like us last year.
I'm just out in the elements, and I did bring a sweatshirt. Didn't do me justice. Poor little Jeremiah was there, and he didn't bring a sweatshirt at all. Luckily, we had some extra Prasco
That
sweatshirts.
sounds
He didn't bring a sweatshirt again.
Yeah.
Does he not own sweatshirts? We went to we went to Denver and it was snowing, legitimately snowstorms. And he looks at us, he's like, yeah, I didn't think we need a sweatshirt. So now he didn't have a sweatshirt twice. Everywhere I go, I bring a sweatshirt, even just for the nighttime.
I wish
Well, that's definitely the case for you. I mean,
Correct.
About 90% of the time, you are wearing a hoodie, which is fine.
Correct.
But I think maybe the opposite clone of you is Jeremiah at this point.
I guess so.
Some people like sweatshirts, some people don't.
Well, it was funny because he puts on a T-shirt. We leave. It's like 40 degrees and windy. And I'm like, do you need a sweatshirt? He's like, I can make it. We're outside for 5 minutes. And he goes, hey, man, you still got that offer for the sweatshirts? I was like, yeah, they're in the truck. Go get the truck. But the little 500, really cool. It was something I've never experienced before. Obviously, that movie's made about it. It's a really cool little event that they do. All the racers are Indiana students. I got back about 10 p. Saturday night, and I drop off Jeremiah. I go put the board away out in Trenton. After I put the board away, I get a call. Hey, Reed. I'm broke down on the side of the highway. It's Jeremiah. I gotta go bring him gas. So I brought him gas out on 129. So I had to help out old Jeremiah. But it was good. Sunday was a busy day. Played baseball, cut grass, cleaned my house, yada yada yada. It was good.
Sometimes Jeremiah, you think it's maybe just like a part of the funny that comes with Jeremiah or the bit that is him, but it's not a bit at all. I think it's just part of what part of what you're dealing with. You know what I always think back? I think he's just a baby boy, as you would say. So you got to teach him things throughout life, right?
Yeah.
You can't expect.
He's only 19.
You can't expect a whole lot out of. He can vote. You know, he could serve the military. But you know what? He's still a baby boy, so we got to take care of him. Headlines,
yes! Let's put the mic, I'm trying to put it as close as I can to my face. The Reds, they finished off a sweep, as Casey mentioned yesterday. Shout out to Casey, he was at the game. 3-0, obviously you blank them. The bullpen goes the entirety of the game. Suter, 3 1/3, 2 Ks. Pagan, 2 innings, 1 K. Fernando and Sims, they each go an inning, added a K each. And Diaz closed the door. Shout out to everybody in the bullpen. You did your job. That was a game that the Reds had no business winning, and they won it anyway, so shout out. That's a sweep, get swept, and another sweep for the Reds. Hopefully the Reds can win at least one game in this series so I don't have to go crazy. But shout out to them. Obviously, we mentioned Frankie Montas. X-rays are negative, so we're all good. He's just got that massive bump on his arm. I saw that in the post game. That was ridiculous. Elly De La Cruz, he added 2 more hits yesterday. Turns out he's pretty good at baseball. Candelario and CES, they added the 3 RBIs, double and a triple, respectively. And the Reds are back tonight, obviously, against the Phillies, where Hunter Green is up against Ranger Suarez. Around the league, the Mariners destroyed the Rockies 10-2 in Game 1. Rockies win 2-1 in Game 2. And then the Rockies, shout out to them, man. What a terrible franchise. 5-17 they are to start the season. Rangers, they beat the Braves 6-4. Dodgers, they blanked the Mets 10-0. But in that game, of note, Shohei Ohtani, he breaks Hideki Matsui's MLB record for most home runs hit by a Japanese-born player. So shout out to Shohei Ohtani. I wonder if he had the over on it. Padres, they win 6-3 over the Blue Jays. Marlins and the Cubs, they split their 4-game set after Miami won 6-3 yesterday. Brewers, they shut out the Cardinals 2-0. Cardinals are terrible. Phillies, we mentioned them. We've been talking about them. They win 8-2 over the White Sox. Castellanos 0-4 in that game. He's now hitting 177. The White Sox fall to 3-18. 3-18. Good for the White Sox. The Red Sox, they beat the Pirates 6-1 to help our cause. Turns out the Pirates suck. Pirates have lost 6 in a row, back-to-back sweeps. Good luck to them. I was told this year is going to be different. We'll see. MLB standings, and this is, I guess, just the NL Central standings. The Brewers lead 14. They have a 14-6 record. The Cubs are in second with a 13-9 record. The Reds are right in the middle, 12-9, and they're in third place. Pirates 11-11. Cardinals 9-13. 9-13. Moving on to the NBA postseason. Did I watch any of it? Not even a second. But we're going to talk about it nonetheless. Celtics, they blew out the Heat 114-94. Jason Tatum, a 23-point triple-double to secure the victory. They lead 1-0. Clippers, they were without Kawhi Leonard, but they still cruised to a 109-97 victory of the Mavericks. 1-0 series lead. By the way, the Mavericks scored 8 points in a quarter. 8 points in a quarter. Not going to get it done. The Milwaukee Bucks, they were without Giannis. They still won 109-94 over the Pacers. Damian Lillard scored 35 points in the first half. He didn't score another point the rest of the game, but in the first half he scored 35 points, and the Bucks lead 1-0 over the Pacers. In the Thunder late last night, they beat the Pelicans in a nail-biter, 94-92. Shout out to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I think that's how you say it. That's what I'm going to say it. He scored 28 points on their victory. They lead 1-0 over the Pelicans. They are without Zion Williamson. NHL, I'm not going to read these scores, but I'm going to shout them out anyway. The Jets, the Rangers, Panthers, and Canucks, they are now all 1-0 in their series, so credit to them. Soccer, Casey, I was at a bar on Saturday, and it was an FCC bar. Now, it was, I guess it's an FCC technically, like they do like these partnerships with bars across the city. It wasn't like an actual soccer bar, but the bar was sponsored, I guess, by FCC, so they have to have a game on. Well, I didn't know that when I went to it. And no free ads. So I went to this bar with Zach and my friend Cole. We were watching the Reds game, and we were very concerned that FCC was going to be on all the TVs and the Reds were going to be on none. But we told our waitress, hey, we want Reds on all of these TVs, every single one of them. I don't want FCC on a single one, and she obliged. So FCC was on one TV. There was about 500 TVs in there. One of them went to FCC, but I did get to watch it. I did get to watch that entire game on that one little tiny baby TV they put up for those soccer fans. It was very funny watching some of the FCC fans watch on their phones. Oh, it was so good. But FCC, they scored 2 goals in a span of 2 minutes. I texted Casey around the 61st minute, hey, this team sucks. This team's atrocious. The next minute, FCC scores 1-1, and then in about legitimately a minute after that, Acosta hit the game winner. 2-1. FCC beats Atlanta FC. What do you have to say about your soccer club?
They had us in the first half, that little meme that everyone puts up there whenever a team does really horribly in the first half. Yeah, I mean, this team is they're good. I don't know if they're as good as they were last year. They really need to find other guys to be able to hit shots. Baird missed a wide open one earlier on in that game. I don't think he's ever going to score at this point, and he's one of the strikers that we that got to replace, or one of the wing backs that we got to replace someone. And then Areño, that was good to see him have a significant play. Really, that's kind of like the first goal that I can remember, at least from him. He's been waiting to kind of blossom on this offense, and he did a really good job. And Acosta, I mean, he is who he is. He's kind of coming into his own again this year. He just needs to catch his stride. And
the goal where how do you say it? Areño? Is that how you say it?
Yeah. Well, it's actually like the way the announcers say it. It's like I can't even pronounce it.
We can't pronounce it.
I call him Areño. It's like
Moon toss.
Yeah,
anyway, however that guy
there.
scored, it was actually really cool. So I watched that goal. It was legit. They started the passing. It was just him and Acosta back and forth from their own goal side there.
I'll tell you what, if you're a soccer fan right now, and by soccer I mean football, the thing is this: listening to you to try to explain soccer right now would probably be like literally wanting to just ram your head into a brick wall.
Sure.
Could you imagine someone being like, "Yeah, I watched this baseball game. It's like you should have checked it out. I mean, that was great. This guy was like." He stood on top of this mound. He threw the ball, and this guy hit it with a big wooden bat, and it went into a gap. And then one guy ran around the bases.
Yeah. You
just said Acosta. You should have seen this goal. They just passed it back and forth to each other. It was brilliant.
Yeah. Luckily there aren't too many soccer fans, so that's good. Not too many people are going to be offended by it. Shout out to Mouse Cop. He got offended by it. PGA news. The Heritage Open, that final round concluded today. Scotty Scheffler is the first player since Bernard Langer, I believe is how you pronounce that. Bernard Langer in 1985 to win both the Masters and the RBC Heritage in the same year. So shout out to him. And Tyler Reddick, he wins Talladega, the super speedway.
Yeah, that was an awesome finish. For the few things that I seen this weekend, I watched a little NBA basketball, a little association basketball, not a ton of it. Watched a little bit of hockey, and then I really watched the last 50 laps of Talladega, which I would tell you actually was fun. It was interesting. The cars were, basically lined up 3 wide there for a minute towards the end. One car, ended up trying to block. McDowell, I think is the guy's name, was trying to basically block to save time there. You keep telling me time, and I've said clock and time in two things. I mean, I'm pretty well aware that we're getting ready to take a break here on 14:10. But to finish my point, McDowell was basically going for gold there at the end, and he got loose, and it caused this crazy accident. Although if you're on socials, there were other reasons that people seem to go to Talladega, which we won't get into because it's a kid show. But yeah, good for NASCAR. That was one of their marquee events of the year, and I thought it lived up to the hype. At least it did for me as a casual fan. And then the other thing that we'll talk about maybe right after this break was, I'll tell you what, I'll tease it. It's the most impressive thing that I've seen all weekend. And it had nothing to do with the Cincinnati Reds, and it was about golf, and it had nothing to do with Scotty Scheffler.
Oh.
That, after this on 14:10 Wing AM. All right, we are back on a Monday edition. You know the Monday, the song that the Imagine Dragons sing. That's the type of stuff that would be fun to do here on the old internet.
Yeah.
If you could just start shows off, and we could do shows, and we could just have kind of like the jolly effect of our show. The problem is the copyright, as we talked about before. But there was something that happened over the weekend, as I was getting ready to say. Before we went to break, that was incredibly impressive. Like, I watch YouTube golf. For those that don't know what YouTube golf is, it's essentially you have kind of a one brand named Good, which was a bunch of guys that are really, really talented at golf. They do trick shots. They have fun. They film themselves on the course. And it's a relatively enjoyable watch if you clearly enjoy golf. Well, there's another guy that I follow named Grant Horvat, and I had watched maybe one of his videos, I don't say 3 weeks ago. And he said he went on a mission to try to find the world's best amateur player. And he had found or got a hold of essentially a 15-year-old that he went and played a round of golf with. And they obviously filmed it, put a YouTube video out about it. And the crazy thing about it was, and the thing that made me kind of like be taken aback a little bit, was the fact that the 15-year-old, the amateur, had no idea what YouTube golf was. Doesn't get on YouTube, he says. Which was wild to think about. There's a 15-year-old that just isn't on the internet, which that's fine. That's great. The other thing that's wild was when you start watching him play, you're like, how old is this kid? 15 years old. 15, that's like a freshman in high school. Well, if you didn't know, he played on the Korn Ferry Tour event. And if you don't know the Korn Ferry Tour, that's fine. It's basically like the AA, AAA of minor league golf. You're right there on the precipice of getting into the PGA Tour if you're on the Korn Ferry. And he went out and played an event as an amateur. How'd he do? Well, here's a scorecard from the third round if you're watching on YouTube. The guy makes the cut, starts to struggle, goes double bogey, bogey, bogey. Now, how many people in the world, I'm not about just kids, people in general, go double bogey, bogey, bogey in anything, and the wheels completely fall off. You just start playing horrendous, and you just give up, you quit. Some would say, the round's over, et cetera, et cetera. He then levels things out, ends up birdieing, he pars out, ends up birdieing his turn at 9, shoots a 39 on the front, and then goes eagle, birdie on the back, shoots a 31, and finishes with a 1 under round of 70. And not only that, but he went 7 birdies out of 9 holes on Sunday in his final round, got himself all the way up to T3, and then ended up finishing 19th. That's in a field of nothing but professionals. I'm not trying to overblow this, but he just broke a Tiger Woods record a few weeks ago, being the youngest amateur golfer, being awarded the youngest winner of the Amateur Golfer of the Year. And I'm starting to wonder, maybe it's too early to say this, but I'm starting to wonder if that won't be the next face of golf. Now, I know Scotty Scheffler right now is the man in charge, and that's all well and good, but he's about to have a child, and I don't mean to downgrade parenthood. It's fantastic and all those things.
Sure.
But trying to be a professional golfer and be a good dad, which I suspect that Scheffler will probably be, considering the way that he obviously talks in pressers and just the way he conducts himself in general, I would think that his game will suffer because of his kid. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm just saying that's the reality of the situation. So golf's going to be looking for somebody to carry the load. And here comes a 15-year-old that's breaking Tiger Woods records and finishing T19 in a major golf event at 15 years old.
That'd be big.
What does he do when he goes back to his high school? What do you think he does?
Oh, I don't know. I'm sure he's a normal kid. I'm sure he's a normal guy. I don't think being a superstar in golf is like being a superstar in basketball.
You're suggesting to me that the junior or the senior in the school that averages 13 points a game for the high school teams, he's a bigger man on campus than that kid?
Probably, yeah.
You agree with that?
I don't know, because if it's a D1 basketball player, like, yeah. But if it's just a guy that's just like they're their best basketball player that's not going to play in college. And
if this kid was playing at Lakota East,
yeah,
and Nate Johnson was there,
Nate Johnson will be a bigger man on campus.
Correct.
Really?
Yeah. Correct.
Yeah.
Wow.
But like, if it's just like an average basketball team that's not going to have a D1 guy, then yeah, that kid's. Listen,
it's no knock. It's no knock. It's just how it is. Yeah. He's also a child, so it's. If you're a senior in high school, it's a little bit different. You have more seniority anyway. So, yeah.
A couple thousand people go to watch Nate Johnson play basketball.
0 people go to watch the kid play.
Right, like none of his classmates.
None
of his classmates are going to his matches.
Well, his matches are professional events. I don't think that they're high school matches, unless he decides maybe he does play in those high school matches, and if he does, he's gonna basically make it a mockery. Yeah, maybe true. I don't know. I think that would be a little bit different, but that's here nor there. I'm not going to debate all day on a Monday with the NFL draft right around the corner about whether or not there would be a high school golfer that's world class that would get more attention than the Mid-American level type Division I basketball player. But that's here nor there. All right, the draft this Thursday. You find yourself in a position now where the mock drafts are going to change 10 different ways. We continue to speculate on what one team's going to do versus the next team. And here soon, we don't have to speculate any longer, do we? The truth is that now you find yourself in a position as a Bengals fan starting to hone in. I think probably 3 or 4 names at this point of who you want. Comes down to priority. The question I have, I guess we'll start off this discussion with this. Do you think that the Bengals, and this is an unfair question because you might not know what the Bengals ultimately want. Do you think that the Bengals in a perfect world are going to actually have a situation where they get the guy they originally wanted?
You mean like? Well, I don't know if.
What are the chances at 18 that you actually get what you're desiring?
You put multiple cards in your hands there, right? Like you get 4 guys. You're like, if one of these guys, I just want one of these guys.
Yeah, they don't. I don't think they settle on any one guy. I think they have a list of guys that are. The way that I would describe it is a lot how No Free Ads Joe Goodberry sets up his big board, which is 1A. Which is your top tier guys. This is who you're running up to the podium to get your number 1A option.
And they have to be clear on the Goodberry board here. You're suggesting to me that he has a list of names within that one.
Yeah.
There's not just one name there.
No.
What happens? This is where I always love This is where I love these dumb little things that everybody does to try to make themselves feel better or smart. Okay, well, here's the guys we're going to run up to the podium for. There's 4 names. What if all 4 of those names are on there? I know that everyone's going to be like, well, that's not going to be the case. I'm just saying, if they are, what do we have now? We have a list. Oh, it's a magic. It's just a list straight down in a row. I'm saying, do you think that they get top? You can be somewhat realistic. If they want, my point is, if they wanted J.J. McCarthy, which they don't, but if they did at 18, we all know he's going to go before that because he's so good.
It's so good.
So good. But my point is, do you think they have a realistic shot of getting who they want?
I think that they will be happy with a guy at 18, and they'll like I said, they'll be happy. They'll probably run up to the podium for that guy's name. I think that at 18, there's going to be 3 or 4 guys on that tier list, like I said, in that order that they're going to be really happy with. I could see them in a scenario possibly even trading back if the right trade came to them. Mm-hmm. Like I said, we've talked about all the different prospects. I made a top 10 list on the show that Elliot hosted, and I feel like you're going to find yourself with at least 4 of those guys on my top 10 list. And if that's the case, I think the Bengals are going to be really happy with what they get.
Was Byron Murphy on your top 10 list?
Yes, he was.
He was on your top 10. Okay. I was just making sure.
If the Bengals don't have their guy at 18,
we have a problem.
Do they call up the Atlanta Falcons and trade their pick for Jesse Bates? Is that what they do?
That's ridiculous.
Now we're getting into some real sports
Is
talk.
that what we're doing? Yeah.
Yeah, let's get into
let's
that.
solve that problem. That's just.
I'm glad to
that's
have him
revisionist
back.
history.
I'm glad to have him back.
Let's do that.
The Jesse Bates hater.
I'm not a hater.
You
What
are
are you
a hater.
talking about?
What a hole to dig yourself into.
I'm
now.
not a. Listen, if you guys want me to make a take that
Sure.
my age like milk, like sour milk. We talked about Nick Castellanos earlier. You remember people were storming the Capitol, and the Capitol being Great American Ballpark when they didn't re-sign Castellanos.
That's not why people did that, but yeah.
I think we might look at the Jesse Bates thing in a few years ago like that was a pretty smart move not to re-sign Jesse Bates. I think that's
That's just wild.
that's
All right.
what I want to say.
Fine.
That's all I'll say.
Great.
Hey,
take.
listen, what happened the first year when so we're 1 year into it. What happened in Philadelphia with Castellanos? They went to the World Series. He had a pretty good postseason. Everyone's like, see, this is why we should have got Castellanos.
I got a question for you.
Sling it, Big Pimpin'.
If I'm just saying, I of course this is where like the debate of whether or not spending money or not spending money, but if the Phillies, you could argue the Phillies could have won a World Series because Castellanos was on the team. Yeah. If they would have won the World Series, which they didn't, to be fair, if they would have won the World Series though, is the Castellanos debate completely gone? Like it's irrelevant, right? Can't argue it. Doesn't matter how bad he is for the next few years. You could just say, you know what, we spent the money, we won a World Series. How many World Series do you have?
Well, this fan base will argue it, but yeah, for common sense
I
purposes.
don't think that changes what the Reds giving him money. Like it was a pretty clear cut day that the Reds shouldn't have given him $100 million, which is what he got in Philadelphia. Yeah, if they win the World Series with Castellanos, that works for Philadelphia. But also, it was the smart move by the Reds to not pay Nick Castellanos $100 million.
I mean, that's just.
Is that crazy to say? Like,
no, I'm not.
Can both
I'm just
You can't
saying.
argue it now. You can't argue it now. You're on the right side of it now. I'm just the way everybody people were mad because they didn't the Reds front office didn't talk to his representation. They didn't even entertain the possibility of Nick Castellanos coming
right,
back.
and they didn't.
Which
they
again,
didn't Jesse Bates.
Which again, right now looks great. Evan Maurer, go on your victory tour, buddy. You're right. But I will say that I hope at some point that philosophy changes.
Am I crazy? Like if the Phillies would have won the World Series that year, yeah, it would have worked for Philadelphia. But like also it was a good move by the Reds to not sign him.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
both
you can make
things
that
be
argument.
true.
You also brought something up earlier that I didn't really want to get into, and we're going to start talking. This is we'll save this segment for later, but you said something earlier. You got to remind me because my brain won't remember. But you said something about the Cubs before the show started that I would like to get back to.
Ooh, okay.
I would like to get back to.
Yeah.
All right, let's stay on the NFL talk because otherwise, Casey, I got to tell you, that hat though, before we get going, that hat it puts you in a place where I look over there and I think of like a 47 to 50-year-old that's been well weathered, well matured. You've had season tickets for the last 15 years. You haven't missed a game. I'm just saying, those are the vibes I get when I look over there. If that's what you're going for, stick with it.
Well, that is kind of what I'm going for. This is my my grandfather's hat. He passed away a couple years ago, and I've been wearing it ever since.
Oh
Yeah, he's the guy that Sack. Yeah.
That's how I remember your grandpa.
Sack. I'm glad that's how like hundreds of people know my grandfather is by that one clip. Anyways, that's
so top of the board. All right, let's just say perfect world. This is putting you on the spot a little bit here, but a perfect world, Casey McAllister is selecting who?
In my perfect
one
dream scenario.
I don't want the list of 3 or 4 names. I'm saying that all of these guys are available. Who are you picking?
For me, I think it's Brock Bowers. I think he provides you with the most bang for your buck. He's going to start right away. He's going to give you at least 700 snaps in the slot at tight end. He's solidifying a position for the next 5 years. A blue chip collar type of player. That would be my guy running up to the podium 100%. The other guy that's basically tied with him, if it was a 50-50, this would be a 51 to 49% chance. How I love these guys. It would be Jerzon Newton at 1A or 2A or however you want to.
1B, I think is what you're looking
1B,
for.
Yeah.
Yep.
Jerzon Newton. He is a dominant force, 3-tech, but he doesn't just rush the passer really well. I feel like he just dominates in every facet. He makes guys look silly, an animal, nasty, tenacious. Those are the words I would use to describe this guy. Really love Jerzon Newton.
From a scale of not 1 to 10, but just in general of all the things that happened throughout the year, the draft, and I guess being on a sports talk show, perhaps I shouldn't say this out loud, but the draft has never really done it for me. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just because nobody loses on draft day. You're gonna hear it. Nobody loses. No matter what fan base you go to on X.com, you're gonna half the fan bases are gonna think they killed it in the draft, and half the fan bases are gonna think they did terrible. And then you peel the curtain back 3 years later, and a quarter of the fan base was wrong here and a quarter was wrong there. I'm not suggesting that there aren't times where you have a clear-cut answer or something happens in the draft that is going to change your team. But unless you have one of the top 5 picks and you have a severe deficiency in one area, and that area more than likely is quarterback, if you're not one of those teams, if you're the Bengals or, I don't know, let's just say 75% of the NFL, it's really at this point more or less just hoping that you hit. It's not so much like you get the guy and you think to yourself, all right, we did a good job or we didn't do a good job. It's so impossible to tell. And I think that at this point, I don't want to suggest I'm just going to not care at all about the draft, but I'm going to be a little more reserved. It's like, okay, there's guys that the Packers have drafted in the past that I thought, oh, I'm super excited. They were terrible. And then there's guys I'm just like,
Jordan Love.
I'm extremely.
I worked for you when that happened.
Extremely pissed off that they draft this guy and he ends up being a pretty damn good player. So you just sit around. Now, outside the quarterback position, I just want to say I'm a casual quarterback whisperer. I was the first guy to say, I hate to say this, I was the first guy to say that Justin Fields was a fidget spinner. Turns out I was right. Now, I don't want to sit here and keep saying that, but I was right. This guy is going to a team that has Russell Wilson as a starting quarterback, and they're suggesting he's not even going to get a chance. Is that right? Do I remember that right?
That's correct.
That is right.
Trace,
okay.
I'm not gonna let you call yourself the quarterback whisperer,
Yes.
trademark TM, whatever you want to do.
You're going to say that Baker Mayfield was a miss?
When your two biggest takes since I've worked for you
Please.
are that Tom Brady stinks and Patrick Mahomes stinks. Those are bad takes.
No, that's
Those
not
are
what
your
I'm
two
saying.
takes.
My 2 takes were that those guys have been very fortunate in their careers to have what they've had around them that make them who they are. I'm not going to sit here and act like Patrick Mahomes is any better than some of the other top-level guys in the league. I'm just not going to do it.
I'll never forget my first month working for you. We start talking about the NFL for some reason in the old office, and we got talking about Tom Brady, and I was like, yeah, Tom Brady's great. And you're like, oh yeah, really? Is he? You pull up some tape, and he's just dumping it to a wide open Julian Edelman. He's like, oh, I could do that, Reed. I could do that. And I'm like, what are you doing right now? I just remember that from the first month. You were very
Listen,
far out on top.
And Tom Brady won me back over when he went to Tampa Bay. He went and did it on his own. And you know what? Kudos to him. Now, he did go to a pretty good team, and that's what it takes. It takes a good team to be a decent quarterback, period. And I think that there's times that they maybe get a little overblown. All right, we'll finish up our draft talk right after this on 1410 Wing AM, and probably get into the Reds. All right, welcome back in. It's Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers on a lovely Monday.
What a beautiful day.
It is a nice day. Well, it's actually very, very cold in the morning.
Yeah,
but by the time we get out of this office, I think it's going to be what we would call perfect.
Perfect? What was that?
Perfect, yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I agree. I think it'll be very nice.
That inflection.
60 degrees, and 60 degrees, right around 60 is my perfect temperature.
Hoodie weather, as some would say.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's my absolute favorite. It's not freezing cold. It's just cold enough to be comfortable. Cool enough, I would say. It's cool enough.
We have 4 guys in the room, and there's only one guy that's really qualified to talk about the draft, and that's obviously Casey. Maybe Reed has. I don't know. I don't know if Reed's been doing a lot of digging in regards to the NFL draft. I guess I'll ask you really quickly. Are you a draft guy or?
No. Listen, I love the Bengals, but I think we all know my strategy when it comes to the draft is I just sit and I wait, and I sit in this little chair over here, and whatever happens, I'll tell you why it's the greatest thing ever. I'll just spin it. I'll just take that top and I'll just put it on the desk and spin it, and they'll be the great. Unless they draft something like if they get like an edge rusher, even like a top tier edge rusher. That one doesn't make sense to me. But pretty much any other draft pick, I could probably spin it the right direction. I will say I want to tackle. I want to tackle.
You're all in on tackle.
Early. First 2 rounds, want to tackle because we have this handsome blonde guy. I don't know if you've heard of him. His name's Joe Burrow. If he's upright, Bengals typically do pretty well. So if he's upright and healthy, does pretty well. So I want that to happen as much as possible. I don't want Brock Bowers because what does that say? What does that do for Drew Sample? What does that say about DS89?
Well, that doesn't replace DS89. That just Brock Bowers is going to be replacing Tyler Boyd. He replaces your Charlie Jones, Andre Yosivas, Gesicki role.
Who's one guy that you're going to be absolutely furious if they take, based off of some of the projections?
My one guy I'll be absolutely furious that they take is Troy Fatanu. Undersized for the position. He's going up against Myles Garrett and TJ Watt twice a year, and he's all 295.
That's the kid from Washington?
Yeah.
Yeah, steer clear of that.
Yeah, he's a better fit for a guard. Very athletic. I'll give him that. But you go watch his tape against Michigan when it matters most, and he's getting bullied.
Or just when they actually play a competent team that has other NFL players on it. You know? I think that's fair to say.
That's fair to say, too. I think that's very fair. And that's my one guy I really hope they steer clear from. I would rather go get his partner beside him, Rosengarten, the actual right tackle on that team. He looked better than Fatanu to me.
Is there a world where the Bengals trade up?
No. Right?
They have extra picks. They got that extra 3rd round to make whatever.
And even
move
if you
they
did
want.
move up, like what pick would you move up to?
Yeah. What are you trying to get?
The only one that I could see them trading up for to get is Brock. If Brock is somewhere there, like around 13, 14, maybe.
If we trading up, then I want to get a franchise tackle.
Yeah, I think
that would make sense. To where you go get like a Joe Alt kind of guy.
That's fair.
The only other guy I think that would make sense to trade up for is Olu Fashanu. He is like right there with Joe Alt. In fact, I think he's a better fit for what the Bengals want to do.
Higher ceiling than Joe Alt. Joe Alt's got a pretty high floor.
I think Joe Alt has the higher ceiling, and I think it's opposite. But regardless, I think Olu Fashanu fits exactly what the Bengals want to do. He was asked to do a lot of pass blocking sets, true pass blocking sets where he's having to come up off the line really quickly against wide nines. They played a lot of NFL-style defenses, and he looked pretty good. I will say he struggled a little bit against Ohio State, but other than that, he took care of business pretty much against every other team.
If they trade back and get more picks in the top 100, I'd love that as well.
Yeah,
that's if someone for some reason wants to take the 18th pick, maybe the Vikings load up to get more capital to move up or something like that, and you just get more picks in the top 100. I would like that. Sure. Yeah. I mean, the simple fact of the matter, and Trace always says this, outside of the top 10 picks, you get in those mid-teens, late teens to the late first-round picks. Yeah, you get some higher ceilings there, but they're all pretty good players. So why not just load up on second-round guys, right? If you get more impact players, then that's what you want. This, much to what you read on X.com, the Bengals roster they have a pretty good roster, right? There's still a few holes. I know everyone's worried about the defense. This is still a team that people anticipate to compete for a championship, anticipate to compete in a very challenging AFC North and in an AFC. If you get more first-day starters or impact players in the second and third rounds, and they hit on that last year, second and third-round picks last year, if you get more of that, then you give yourself a pretty good chance to compete.
And even if they trade back, too, that doesn't mean they can't trade back up in the second round to get a guy they like, too. Right. Like, with those extra picks, you're just giving yourself ammunition to go get the guy that you want, like Trace was alluding to.
Let me ask you this, Reed, because Casey and I think, are pretty much on the same page where with the 18th pick specifically, I think defense is what we would like to see if Brock Bowers is not available. Would you want offensive line or do you want defense? With the 18th pick.
There's this handsome blonde guy that plays quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah.
When he's upright,
Yeah.
The Bengals are pretty good.
Yeah.
I would like for them to protect him at all costs. That's what I would like to do. I'm not as worried as other people are on the defense. I get that it was a pretty bad defense last year. I get that it's very young. I get that we still have a hole where DJ Reader was. All those things. Understand. The key to success for this team moving forward is the same key to success that they've had in the past, and that is, hey, let's let Joe Burrow play quarterback, right? Let's keep him healthy. Let's keep him upright. This team has good chances to compete.
But the counter to that is they have not been good at drafting offensive linemen.
And they have a starter at the moment.
So what position would he be? And he would not be an impact player right away, which proves the point is really what are you doing?
You can't continue to point out though that they've not been able to. They've had an ineptitude of drafting O linemen and then be scared or say they shouldn't draft an O lineman high because of that reason alone. If that's the reason, or I'm not suggesting the Bengals are never going to say that, but I'm just saying if the fan base or the overall outside view of the Bengals is, well, they're going to mess it up anyways, well then they got to make some change internally at some point. Like, that's the only thing I would say about Frank Pollock, and I think he's liked or beloved, if you will, maybe within the confines of the facility. And we actually have somebody that spoke highly of him last year that was around the NFL a little bit. My only thing is, like, if you go and get a tackle in the first round and it is a swing and a miss, there is no chance that Pollock can survive that. Zero chance. And it's not so much that it's all his fault. It's just that, again, there needs to be some accountability from the standpoint that you can't keep continuing to find ways in which you bring this guy in, and you swing and miss, and you swing and miss, and you swing and miss. Speaking of swing and missing, to jump off the Bengals here for just a moment, I don't know if you got a chance to see or more or less hear what Caleb Williams had to say over the weekend on the pivot. The more this guy talks...
Oh no.
The more this guy talks, the more I would be concerned if you're a team that's looking for some type of franchise guy. Because if it goes wrong, that's all I'm saying. If it goes wrong, I'm concerned that you're going to get more and more of this, I don't want to say cocky, and I know there's this cocky, brash attitude that works sometimes, and that's maybe why he's great. But there's not a whole lot of, I guess, humbleness there, it seems. And I worry about how the NFL can humble you to a certain extent. I highly doubt this guy's going to come in and play to the level in which, in his mind, he thinks he's going to be capable of doing. Then the question ultimately becomes, is he going to start pointing the finger and saying it's not him, it's not him, it's not him, it's them? I don't know if you got a chance to see what he said on the pivot.
I did not.
But essentially he, and I'm sure Casey might be able to dial that up here. But, the idea is that he got frustrated at Oklahoma because he felt like he was the better quarterback right when he got there. He didn't get a chance, left, and they asked him what are some things that basically he's looking to what are some things that he's doing at his pro day that are different than others to try to prove whatever it is that he might have holes in. And he said that the only reason that people think that he's not a pocket guy, he doesn't sit in the pocket, he's not patient, is because he can make highlight plays and other guys can't. And you know what? That might be true. I just don't know if that's the answer that I would go with.
Caleb Williams didn't leave Oklahoma because he wasn't starting.
No.
He left Oklahoma because Lincoln Riley went to USC, and he started the back half of that year for Oklahoma.
Correct. He was just more or less saying that there was some rift there because he essentially felt like he had beat out Spencer Rattler right from the get-go, and that's fine. And he did not leave Oklahoma by any stretch of the imagination. Right. It's more or less just – it just sounds like he's throwing a little bit of a pity party in the interview at times, for me, personally. But, again, the other concern, I guess, you had brought up the Washington tackle that you were concerned about, Fantu. Is that how you say his name?
Yeah, Fatanu.
Thank you.
It's probably not a great pronunciation,
but point is, well, we don't do pronunciations well on the show, anyways. Mouse Cop will tell you. The thing is this: are you concerned at all about the fact that he did not play all that high level of defenses in the first place when he was at USC, and then when he has played some relatively elite competition, it's not like he tore it up? Is that a reasonable concern?
Well, I would also say that the talent around Caleb Williams wasn't all that great either.
Those teams weren't good. Those USC teams were only competing because of Caleb Williams. Remember Spurbear talking about USC when they were almost in the college football playoff? He was laughing about how little they looked compared to Big Ten teams. And to say that they didn't play great teams, great defenses, I guess that is somewhat true. But the Pac-12 was the strongest it's ever been this past year. And USC wasn't very good, but Caleb Williams still was pretty good. Listen, teams all the time, quarterbacks all the time that work out in the NFL don't necessarily play great competition. Lamar Jackson was playing at Louisville. Wasn't necessarily playing great competition all the time. Josh Allen famously played at Wyoming. Patrick Mahomes had a 500 record in college. Like, all these things, maybe we put too much emphasis into what they do in college. Like, it seems very nitpicky. It seems like you're very picking your battles. Well, if he plays really good competition, and then he's a winner, right? That's the thing people always say about J.J. McCarthy. He's a winner. A.J. McCarron was a winner. And all these guys were winners because they played for Alabama and they're playing tough competition, all these things. Now we're looking at Caleb Williams. Yeah, but was the defense he was playing not very good? At the end of the day, everyone that scouts these guys are saying this guy's great. And we keep trying to instill reasons why the Chicago Bears shouldn't take Caleb Williams. If you gave all 32 GMs, all 32 owners, the exact situation that the Chicago Bears have roster-wise and give them that pick, I think unanimously they all take Caleb Williams.
I don't know if it's that clear cut. I really don't. I mean, we'll find out. And you know, the unfortunate thing about the NFL draft or the quarterback assessment always, and there's some rightful reasoning in this. It's never going to be one person's fault, anyways. If put it this way, if C.J. Stroud struggles last year, right? It would not have been about C.J. Stroud struggling. It'd have been the fact that he played for the Texans. But since he was great, then all of a sudden, it's not that big of a deal anymore. He's just awesome. Bryce Young struggles last year, and it's not Bryce Young's fault. It's the Panthers' fault because they're inept. And you know what? There might be some truth in that. But if you put C.J. Stroud on the Panthers, are they different? No one knows, but I'm just saying, like, ultimately, if he does struggle for the Bears, is it going to even be his fault in the first place?
Well, I think the Bears have done a very good job at getting him every opportunity to succeed. And this is where I always say, like, hey, where you go definitely matters. If Patrick Mahomes doesn't go to the Chiefs, I still think he's great. He doesn't have 3 Super Bowl rings. If we're looking at Bryce Young, there's very few quarterbacks that could have made that situation work last year. Where you go definitely matters, but the Bears are doing their best work to give Caleb Williams a solid foundation. They're giving him a chance. And listen, I don't know. I think Caleb Williams is going to be a really good quarterback in this league for a lot of time to come. I think that when people hate on Caleb Williams, it's a little weird. I think that they're just looking for reasons to hate him. I'm not going to go into that all right now, but yeah, Casey's got something.
Yeah, the one thing that I would like to say about experts saying that this is the next best quarterback that we've seen since Andrew Luck or since whoever is that they all said the same thing about Trevor Lawrence, and they've said all the same things about other guys too in different drafts,
Name
like
them.
Tua,
who was the third quarterback taken, or he was the 6th pick.
Yeah,
in the draft,
but I'm just saying that experts are wrong sometimes. Experts don't always get it right, and that's why there's always a ton of quarterbacks that get drafted every year because it's just like throwing a dart up there on a draft.
But I will say, usually, and again, this is just the track record of the award. Usually, Heisman winners are pretty damn good in the NFL, and that's just a fact. And this is a Heisman Award winner, and
Johnny Manziel is pretty good.
Yeah,
Got to give it to you.
Well, that's one name.
Well, I'll go down the list. Go ahead, you keep going.
I was just saying. I'm just saying. I'm more with Reed on this. As long as what you're saying isn't like legit problematic, it doesn't really matter. It's how you perform on the field, and that's what I'm going to be looking for. I think Caleb Williams is fine. I think he's going to be a damn good pick. If you're the Chicago Bears, you have to do it, and I think he's going to succeed there. So
I think the surrounding noise with Caleb Williams is forcing the Bears to take this pick, and I think it is the right pick. I really do. I'm not suggesting that he shouldn't be number 1 overall. What I am suggesting though is I don't think
you just want them to pump the brakes on the hype.
Yeah, I think it's a little malpractice to be dubbing this guy the best since Andrew Luck or Trevor Lawrence, because I think the competition thing is a fair argument. I'm looking at some of the numbers here. When he faced even top 25 teams,
he played
in his own conference, and he played well in those games, but he had some interceptions here and there. He had some turnovers, and I'm not able to watch all the film, so I don't know if they're truly his mistakes. But things that you can control, like turning the ball over, you got to limit those. And some of those games he really struggled in. So
is he better prospect, I guess, than Joe Burrow?
So listen, I was going to push back on
I think he
is. On what Casey said about they always hype up these guys, and I was like, listen, the last four prospects that I remember them hyping up a lot, like saying these guys are for sure one of ones, like you should take them with the number 1 pick. You don't even have to think about it, right? You pass in your letter to Roger Goodell, and they call the name, and that was Andrew Luck, who was a great quarterback. That was Joe Burrow, who's been pretty good. That's Trevor Lawrence, who Casey's made up his mind. I say the tape's still out there. And then there's Caleb Williams. That's a pretty good success rate. They didn't do this with Bryce Young. They didn't do this with Jameis Winston. They didn't do this with Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield. They didn't give this much hype to those players. They're giving it to Caleb Williams. They're saying this guy is a unicorn. This guy doesn't come around. Not all first overall draft picks are created equal. And I think that there's a lot of people that are just putting their flag and they say, Caleb Williams is going to be a bust, because they know in 3 years, if he isn't, they can just go like, yeah, well, everyone said he was going to be great, and he turned out to be pretty great.
Let me clarify, because I do think he is the number 1 quarterback prospect in this draft class. I just don't think he has a perfect resume. Whereas like Andrew Luck, I think he pretty much had a damn near perfect resume.
Well, you just said like, hey, I didn't like Caleb Williams didn't play great competition. Caleb Williams played in the same conference as Andrew Luck, and Caleb Williams played it in a year where it was probably the strongest it's ever been. Yeah, so, like,
that's fair. That's fair. You're fair. That's a fair point. I just know that like Andrew Luck never had any blemishes against any of the competition that he faced. And again, like I've said it time and time again, it's hard to evaluate him because he was completely taking over games where the talent around him, you don't really know what it's like. I think I know what it was like. He didn't have a great offensive line. He didn't have a good defense. He had some good receivers. That's about it.
I would say the biggest argument would be more or less that it's you can sit here and say, well, his team wasn't good. His team wasn't good. He had some pretty good receivers, and
he did. But he had a
terrible
line,
played against defenses that were horrible, atrociously bad. We're talking all-time bad defenses. And I'm not sitting here suggesting for a single second that he can't be great, but I'm not going to crown him as being the next best quarterback that's come out since Andrew Luck. Maybe you could convince me of Joe Burrow, but it's been hit or miss on Heisman quarterbacks. Jaden Daniels obviously was a Heisman as well, so this draft has two opportunities to make a Heisman winner.
He'll probably go
being a good quarterback in the NFL. But to go down through it, for those that are wondering, you have obviously Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams. Time will tell on them. You have Bryce Young. Time will tell on them. I'm not going to sit here and suggest after 1 year playing with the Panthers that he's going to be terrible. After that, you have Joe Burrow, Kyler Murray,
pretty good.
Baker Mayfield,
pretty good.
Lamar Jackson,
really good.
You better be ready. Here we go. Marcus Mariota, Jameis Winston, Johnny Manziel, Cam Newton, good. RG3, you could say he got hurt, to be fair. Sam Bradford, Tim Tebow, Troy Smith, Matt Leinart, Jason White, Carson Palmer, you got one. Eric Crouch, Chris Weinke, excuse me. See here. And then we're getting down into Danny Werfels of the world and Charlie Ward.
Can we agree?
We're getting pretty down the list here.
Can we agree that maybe the game of football at the college level has changed in 10 years since Marcus Mariota won the Heisman? Can we agree on that? Like the game of football, like these guys are coming out with more reps at quarterback than they ever have because youth football, you know, they're starting to sling the pigskin around when they're in 5th grade, 6th grade. They're slinging it 50 times in high school and not just turning around and handing the ball off. So the game has changed. So I'll give credence to that. I'm not completely defending Elliott's take, but you know the recent quarterbacks that have won the Heisman in the last 10 years have been pretty good. Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Baker Mayfield, all pretty good quarterbacks.
It depends on what we're talking. I mean, listen, I think at the end of the day, it depends on what's the measuring stick for Baker Mayfield. Like, I obviously defended Baker Mayfield. I thought that he could be a reasonable, serviceable, good quarterback in the NFL. I would say if you're picking a guy 1-1, I don't know. It doesn't seem like that's what you were expecting to have happen. Is a career like Baker Mayfield. And I'm not saying Baker's had a bad career. But that's not what you're
Well, that's where I say that not all first overall picks are created equal. Not all drafts are the same.
Sure.
Like Victor Wembanyama is not the same as, I don't know, some bad first overall pick. I don't know, the NBA draft. Like it's not all the same. Bryce Harper is not the same as whoever was like. These things aren't created equal, but they're telling us Caleb Williams is a unicorn in the draft. The one thing that I will say before, because I don't know where we're at on time or anything like that, but I will say that one thing that I like about Caleb Williams that other Heisman quarterbacks haven't gotten is Caleb Williams played with a bad line. Like, he was constantly under duress. And other quarterbacks haven't had that. Normally, these one-of-ones, Trevor Lawrence with Clemson, he wasn't getting pushed around a whole lot. Joe Burrow at LSU wasn't getting pushed around a whole lot. So that's what I do like about Caleb Williams is that he has had to work under bad offensive lines.
That's fair. The only pushback I have is that I think that the even out card in that is he played against horrible defenses. So we shall find out. All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about the Reds. They got Elliott on. They got Elliott on quite the roller coaster. 1 week, they're dead. Next week, they're back. We'll see where they stand in Elliott's mind after this on 1410 Wing AM. All right, off the internet. Or off the radio, not the internet. Before we do ad reads really quickly, do you think that there's I
Sling it.
some fun discussion here really quickly. Do you think that the difference between the hype of essentially Caleb Williams is because they think that there's that big of a gap between the next guy? Like, if there was another,
no,
I'm just saying.
No,
I
don't think. I think this is a pretty talented quarterback class. Like, I think there's there's a reason that a lot of guys are going to go in the first round, and there's a reason that only one guy went in the first round in Kenny Pickett's class. So I think that Caleb Williams, from what I'm hearing, I don't dive into the tape. I'm trusting science here. I'm trusting the scientists. You tell me the world's gonna warm.
You're the analytic guy right now. You have no idea how the analytics get spit out, but you just say, you know what? They spend a lot of money on it. They seem like a reasonable. They got big buildings. They got a lot of money. They got to be smart. So hell with it. I don't really know how it all comes out the other end, but you know what? I'll believe it.
Correct.
Just feed it all to me, baby. Just feed it to me. I don't really care how it got here. I just believe in it.
Listen, when I take my car to the mechanics, I'm going to trust what he says. When I take, you just trust people. Hey, my electrician says I need to do this. Yeah, I don't know how to do it. I'm not going to look into it. Aaron Rodgers does his own research. I don't do my own research. But that was almost so funny. But yeah, Caleb Williams, everyone's telling me that he is like all the things that you want out of a quarterback. Can he create plays? How's his arm strength? Can he see the field? Is he good under pressure? All these things Caleb Williams has done. He showed to have done. Like, if you listen to people that pour into this draft stuff, he says that he's elite almost at everything. At almost everything. When they say this guy's as good as Andrew Luck, they don't throw that praise to people every day. They hype up the quarterbacks every year. Zach Wilson's able to throw off his back foot 60 yards, all that stuff. But they don't hype him up like Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams, I truly do believe is a unicorn. I believe Caleb Williams, the Chicago Bears are going to have a good quarterback for the first time in maybe the franchise's history. Yeah, I believe that.
I think the only reason why I said they say that every year is because we had that with Trevor Lawrence. And I think it's just because it's been so close together that we've got Trevor Lawrence to Caleb Williams is why I feel the way I do about that situation. Could be very wrong. I agree with your process.
But I'm not out on Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair too. The tape is still out on him. But the sources that I'm hearing also all say he should be number 1 too. So that's
and not just number 1, like that he's really, really he's something special. Like
Yeah,
he's a special prospect.
He's still
Now,
special.
this
but
is where you might go in on me, and I will say this. I don't know enough about him as a person to have any clue of what I'm about to say, but I will say it is semi-alarming to me when a guy's in the stands crying. And maybe that's a self-indictment of myself, but I'm just saying in general, the NFL is a pretty tough to play place to play. And if you got to go into a situation like the Bears, which probably you said it's a decent situation, but for most quarterbacks it's not been.
It's okay.
But if he's with the Panthers last year, like, does that all boil over at some point? I do
think so. This is where
that's just me seeing tape and saying, this seems not normal.
One, about the crying thing. I don't know how much sports you played, but I certainly have cried after sporting events that I've lost. I certainly have been that emotional that I've walked off the field in tears. Like that happens. And I know he's at a higher level where you're kind of the face of the team, and maybe you shouldn't do that. But I don't hate a guy for going up, giving his mom a hug, and crying. Like that doesn't seem like the worst thing in the world. And if that is, maybe I don't want to live in this world. But here's the thing about Caleb. Where you go matters. It definitely matters. I just said the thing about Patrick Mahomes. If he doesn't go to the Chiefs, he doesn't win 3 Super Bowls. I think Patrick Mahomes would have worked wherever. I think he would have been a really good quarterback wherever. But he's not doing what he's doing now. Like I said, whoever goes to New England, if they draft a quarterback this class, I mean, send a prayer to them, because that's just a career ruined. More than likely a career ruined. Caleb Williams, I think, would work in a lot of systems. I do think he's that talented. I think that where he goes, he will make them a viable team, or at least look like a viable quarterback, regardless of the situation. But I think I like what the Bears are doing. I mean, they're getting them weapons. They have a lot of draft picks. Like they're doing the right things. The only thing that they did wrong was maybe keep their head coach around. It feels like they should have just hit the reset button all around.
First and foremost, people are sitting here suggesting I'm making a take that if you cry, then whatever, you're soft. I'm not saying that at all. All I was saying was that it wasn't like that was the end of his career. First and foremost, it wasn't. It was a regular game, and again, maybe something else was going on in his life. Fair. Yes, we've all cried. We're human beings. I get that. I also know that as far as writing, the explicitives on my fingernails and all those things probably wasn't something that I did in school either. You can sit here and say that doesn't matter. You can sit here and suggest to me that it's not a big deal. And again, there was rumors, and maybe those rumors got knocked down that his dad was suggesting that he wasn't going to go to certain teams. Maybe all that is just smoke and there's no fire. But I will say, when there is smoke and there's some things that keep adding up, we'll see how it ultimately adds up. And I could be, again, to be very clear, I don't know the guy. I have no idea. But from the outside looking in, there are certain things that he's done that make me think this isn't like a rock solid 100% guarantee it's going to work out like I'm being sold right now. I've watched him play a few games. He's unbelievably talented, yes. I've also seen him make some poor throws, make some poor decisions. He's not a perfect quarterback, and maybe that's not what people are saying. But maybe we live in a society right now where the NFL is just so big that they're touted way more than they used to be as well. I'm trying to maybe make that fair. Would Marcus Mariota be as touted as he was if he came up in this time of frame of age versus when he came out? Maybe so, maybe not. But again, I just don't see him as this 100% lock like they were suggesting of Andrew Luck, and it turned out that Andrew Luck was pretty good, and then obviously, unfortunately, he retired early for the Colts' sake. But that is what it is. But yeah, as far as I'm saying that just because he was crying, he's soft. No, I'm just pointing out the fact
I think the
that
hate around Caleb Williams
a little interesting.
What do you think's more problematic? Caleb Williams painting his nails and crying, or wearing a gas mask on draft day? What do you think's more problematic if you were an NFL scout? By the way, that one worked out pretty well too.
Yeah, Laramie Tunsil's pretty good. Yeah,
I would say maybe one guy was trying to do something that was relatively private. One guy was going to a press conference with his fingernails painted and was trying to draw attention to himself, which would say something about their character maybe more than the other.
Maybe.
That's the way I look at it. If you're seeking attention, a lot of times, in my opinion, that's not a great sign.
Let's move off this. Don't we have? We're 11 o'clock.
Ads.
Yeah, let's go to ads. First off, we have the Bengals report, and that's brought to you by Encore Technologies. Encore Technologies provides IT solutions for a data center world with a suite of services from mobile computing to desktop to data center, supporting both centralized and work-from-home computing modules to improve efficiency and
productivity.
That's right, productivity. The path to innovation begins here. Visit encore.tech. Let me tell you about this lovely bottle of water right here. Pawnee Water, made right here in Hamilton, Ohio. Uses natural limestone filtration, unlike the artificial processing the other brands use. The result is a healthy alkaline water, and some say the best tasting water in the world. Visit Pawnee Water at PAHHNIwater.com so you can buy that great tasting water. And we have our Monday ad, the Game Time app. Use code OTB to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. That's code OTB for $20 off your first purchase. The app is one of the best looking apps out there in the market. It's just 2 simple clicks. You get your tickets right away. You get to see exactly where you're sitting at. And in fact, I used this Game Time app code, I think, yesterday. Yeah, it was yesterday to purchase all my tickets. And I got $20 off my first purchase.
There we go.
It was great.
Boom.
So I encourage you, do the same thing. Buy some Reds tickets.
Might go tonight. We'll have to see.
Yeah.
We'll have to see. Just some housekeeping notes for everybody. We do have to go a little bit shorter on these next several segments because we did go over in the first half. So just a little heads up for the room. And we will be going back to radio in 5 seconds of silence.
All right, welcome back into hour number 2 of Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers on a lovely Monday edition. And we obviously had transitioned from the NFL. We're going to head into the Cincinnati Reds. They found themselves on the winning side of a sweep this weekend. They took care of business, as some would say. I don't know where we are as a fan base yet. Clearly, we were down in the dumps after the Mariners series when you score 5 runs over the course of 3 games. One of those games in which you got a single hit, 1 hit. That hit obviously culminated in a run by Elly De La Cruz. But again, when you watch a baseball game and there's only 1 hit in it, it can become a little daunting, especially when you look at the lineup. You realize the types of guys that are in that said lineup aren't the players in which you perhaps thought were going to be there at the beginning of the year. Yet, here we are. Cincinnati Reds find a way. They bounce back. They sweep the Angels. There's all the conspiracy theories out there on, maybe it was the time zone. Maybe that's why they struggled out in Seattle. I probably would be willing to suggest it was more or less the pitchers that were throwing the baseball than the time zone change, but that's me. They can have their ideas. I have mine. Your overall thoughts after they sweep the Angels, Elliot?
I think some teams just have others' numbers. The Mariners have the best record against the Reds. It's obviously they've destroyed us in Mariners history. They've owned the Cincinnati Reds. It's the best record in MLB history against a single opponent. I will say this: the Angels are owned by the Reds. The Reds have won, I think, 8 or 9 in a row consecutively against the Angels. Yeah. So we have their number. So it's just one of those things. I think a team can have another team's number, and you just own them. And we own the Angels, and it feels good. I was talking to Craig last week, and Craig told me there was a 0% chance the Reds would win this series. And I'm very happy to announce that we swept the Angels. We swept them. And when you have an offense with Elly De La Cruz, you start to feel good. For some of us who did question Elly De La Cruz in Game 3 of the season when he had like 9 errors in that one game, and when I say 9, I mean 2. I maybe overreacted a little bit, but that's what we do as fans. You overreact. And guess what? Every single series, every single game, you're allowed to overreact a little bit. That's part of the fun of being a fan. I'm not going to say the Reds are all the way back. I'm not going to say the Reds are World Series champs. You beat a team you should have beat right before a gauntlet of a schedule begins here, starting with Philadelphia. I'm very excited. The team is competitive, which is what is my number one ask every single year. I want the team to be competitive, unlike what Phil Castellini said when more than half the teams are eliminated before opening day. I want my teams to be competitive. That's what I want. Every game, I want the Reds to be in it, to have a chance, and there's a glimmer of hope for the postseason. And that's what this team is giving me. Elly De La Cruz is, and I know Reed and I were talking about this last week, Elly De La Cruz is the best player on the team. There was an argument Spencer Steer was this year. That argument's no longer in circulation because of what Elly's done over the past, 4 weeks, 3 weeks, doesn't even matter. Since the season started, Elly's been pretty damn good, and he's just been hitting the cover off the ball. And that's not even including a 4-walk game in which he had. Because if he can walk, this is a generational superstar that's going to take this league up by storm. If he can get on base 2 to 3 times a game, the league's done. It's cooked. It's over. And that's just how good he is. When you have Patrick Sandoval, I believe is his name, he was visibly pissed off watching Elly on first base. Visibly. When you have to use the 3 pickoff attempts and then you still don't get them, and Elly just takes second because of the real estate he owns in your head, that's something you don't see in Major League Baseball, really. Not a lot of players have that ability to do that. So I was very excited to see that. Spencer Steer's still unbelievable. There's a couple guys struggling offensively right now. We're still very early. It's April, 22nd? Very early into this season. So I'm not going to overreact either way. I just know the Reds are really competitive and they're really fun. But my biggest concern, and I mentioned it, we were talking before the show, is health. I need this team to be healthy. And I don't know, Reed can attest to it being a Cubs fan. I don't know how many franchises are dealing with injuries that only the Reds get. I mean, this is bad luck to proportions that I've never seen before. We have 4 guys coming down with illness. We got Frankie Montas in the first inning getting drilled by a liner, comebacker. He's done for the game. I don't know. And Jonathan India in a batting practice gets a ball ripped off his leg. If this team can be healthy, once we get TJ Friedel back, if we can hold serve until TJ Friedel, Matt McClain, Noelvi Marte, until these guys get back, this is a playoff team. I still stand by that. I thought that before the year. I think it now. I just think you're gonna have to deal with some of the waves, the ebbs and the flows of a team that's young, and this is a young roster. I just think as of right now, if you say, hey, Elliot, are they going to make the playoffs? I'm going to say they have a better than not chance to make the playoffs, yeah.
Listen, what's going on with the Reds is unfortunate, how many injuries that they've had, and they did a really good job in the offseason at trying to fill those gaps and trying to make a more depth roster. But every team in baseball over the course of 162 is going to have a stretch where people are hurt. Look at the Atlanta Braves right now. They're ace out for the year. Spencer Strider done. They're starting second baseman Ozzie Albies. He's on the IL. They're starting catcher Sean Murphy. He's on the IL. Oh, they've got the best record in baseball because they are so deep. They have a really good roster. The Cubs, they're without their ace. They're without their best relief pitcher. They're without their best position player. They were without Patrick Wisdom and Jamison Talion on top of that, and they have played tough competition. They're still playing pretty well. Like, how deep do we think this Reds team is? But the good thing is they're still playing all right? They got swept last week. As long as they can keep playing well, it calms those worries. That's all I'm saying. Like, every team deals with injuries. You can't pin that and say that's why we're having a bad year. We've had all these injuries because every team deals with them. Are the Reds having more? Yes. But how deep is this roster?
I'd argue the Reds have more than most, and that's my biggest concern is that consistently, as of the past 2 years, the Reds certainly have more injuries than most teams in the league, and unfortunately those injuries are to our best players. That's my concern. But I can't sit here and analyze guys getting hurt. You can't do it. It's just like Reed just said, it's part of the sport. You have to get over it a little bit. So, I'm going to move on. I can't say too much about it. I wish it wouldn't happen. It does. It's sports. But as of right now, with this current Reds roster, I think they're damn good. I think they're fun. As long as you avoid the sweeps, which is my biggest. No more sweeps. I know it's going to happen, but limit them. Limit the sweeps. Take a game, a series, and this team's going to be fine, just fine.
Well, I mean, I think that the goal every day is probably to win, and the question ultimately comes if you're good enough to win or not. And that's where I think most Reds fans probably find themselves right now, is trying to figure out where or how good this team actually is. I do think that there's, as we've talked about many times on this show, and obviously Chatterbox Reds as well, and we'll be live in the top of the 9th inning today. Hopefully the top of the 9th inning. I hope it's not the bottom. If it's the bottom, it means it's a tie game and or the Reds are losing. But I was going to say, the starting pitching is one of those things this year that's different from last. However, the only thing this year that they do not have at their disposal that they had last year is some kind of reinforcement at some point. And you can make the case they don't need it nowhere near as much as they did last year, no doubt about it. But when you have injuries that pop up, there is no doubt that they aren't nearly as exciting to look past the initial big leaguers at AAA right now, or whatever you want to call it, the reinforcements coming through. So you are who you are. You're stuck with who you got. And you have guys like Espinal playing a considerable amount of time right now. And I'm not here to kill Espinal, but I will say that if you're going to rely on Espinal to play most of the season for you in some kind of starting capacity, I'll say it, I don't think you're a very good team. I don't think you're a very good team. Now, some people are going to point back and say, well, look, Espinal, look at what he did 2 years ago. He was an all-star, whatever it may be. I'm so tired of saying what guys used to be, especially if it was a one-off situation. Yeah, maybe you could convince me if Paul Goldschmidt, maybe if he struggles 1 year, you could convince me that that's probably not going to be the norm. But when Scooter Gennett left Cincinnati, did we keep looking back at him and being like, why is Scooter Gennett struggling? Because at some point you are who you are. And if you think that this team has the ability, again, to survive the next 30 to 40 days, then I think you're excited for the rest of the season because TJ Friedel comes back. That helps add depth. Does it fix all the problems? No. Certainly Marte coming back, I had made mention of before, obviously, you realize that McLean went down, and you realize before Friedel went down that if Marte comes back and this team's playing great baseball, then at that point you might not even consider putting him back in the whole mix of things because you don't really want to mess something up that you're not ultimately going to have anyways when it matters the most, which is the postseason. That's not the case anymore. At this point now, it's just survive in advance. See if you can't find yourself towards the end of the year in a pennant race, get to the postseason, worry about it later. But the Reds, for all intents and purposes, they're playing pretty well for what I would consider a couple things that have been a disappointment. CES, disappointment. Jamier Candelario, a disappointment. Bright spots, Tyler Stevenson. So Tyler Stevenson, again, X factor. If he's able to play above his weight per se, then maybe that changes some things. But at the end of the day, how good is this Reds team? How good are they? Can we rely on the bullpen? So far, you've been able to, but that's what's going to matter of the next, call it 30 days. Starts tonight. We'll talk about the Reds and the Philadelphia Phillies right after this on 1410 Wing AM. How many segments we got left?
2.
Okay.
Give me more silence, though.
All right, welcome back into a lovely Monday edition of Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. If you're just joining us, you can go back and watch the entire show in its entirety on YouTube, Chatterbox Sports. Just search Off the Bench. It just brought back flashbacks of Tom. That was a pure Tomism right there.
That was a Tomism.
Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Thanks, United Dairy Farmers, as always, for supporting us. And we had obviously talked about the Reds there just for a moment on the last segment, and now it comes down to the Phillies. Now, I want to ask you something.
Sling it, Big Pimpin'.
I know we were talking about the Phillies and the Reds, but we got in here. We started making fun of we started making fun of the fact that Evan, a good loyal member of our chat, he got crushed last year by the Philadelphia Phillies fans. They were headed to the World Series. He was talking about how Will Benson's better than Nick Castellanos. Castellanos, for all intents and purposes, is tearing it up, hitting home runs in the playoffs. And turns out, from that moment forward, since Evan was getting crushed, he hasn't hit a home run. Now, I do know that people are going to suggest it's my fault when he hits a home run tomorrow, and maybe that is going to be the case. And I say tomorrow.
Yeah, you did go off on a rant when I said the Mariners weren't very good, and then they proceeded to sweep us. So now we're saying Nick Castellanos is really bad. So if he goes off here, who's that? Whose fault is that?
Oh, so you're saying that I blamed you for the Mariners?
Correct.
Well, I just think that saying the Mariners aren't good is blasphemy. They won like 8. I don't know off the top of my head, but they won like 88, and 90 games in a row.
They've won more games over the last 3 years than the Phillies.
Yeah. So my point is like to suggest that team wasn't very good is just what we'll call that East Coast bias.
That's fair.
You just don't get to see them a lot, so you just say you know what.
Haven't had a whole lot of postseason success too.
Yeah, in that. Speaking of postseason success,
okay.
You had mentioned the Cubs. How many of these teams are going to keep signing guys? And maybe I don't want to derail the segment here on the Reds and when it comes to, for lack of a better term, analytics in baseball. But my point is this: you had said you think the Cubs made the right decision.
Yeah.
On all of those guys.
Yeah.
The only
Can you imagine if that happened with the Reds? They won a World Series and it came to hit the re-up on those guys. They go to 3 NLCSs, win 1 World Series, beat in division rivals twice, and you just say, all right, see you guys. Because that's what the Cubs did, and across the board it worked out. But go on with your point.
I was just going to say, you say it worked out, but they've not. What have they done since? The Cubs.
What would we be if our team consisted of Anthony Rizzo, Javi Baez, Chris Bryant, and Kyle Schwarber, and Wilson Contreras?
So you're of the mindset.
What would we be at this moment?
You're of the mindset. Well, I know what you'd be because
it'd be pretty bad.
You haven't won a postseason game since. And my only thing would be this, is that you sit here and you suggest when these guys move away, then they're exactly who they are when they moved away versus where they were at when they started here. Do we think, I guess my bigger question would be, and I'm not here to defend like saying that you automatically move on from this, that, and the other. It just seems crazy that no matter what happens when someone leaves, we act as if that situation that they go to would basically be the exact production they would produce from where they were at from the start. Does Jesse Winker, if he stays in Cincinnati, is he as terrible as he was when he went out to Seattle?
No. That I don't know. And let me. It feels like you're pinning me into a corner where I'm like anti-signing guys. I'm not that at all. I'm just saying when you look in hindsight, which is the benefit of moving 3 years into the future, past where the Cubs were when they didn't re-sign Anthony Rizzo, Kyle Schwarber, Javi Baez, Chris Bryant, Wilson Contreras. 3 years in the future, all those moves worked out. Every single one of them was the right call. So that's what that's all I'm saying.
You say they were the right call, but yeah. I mean, it's crazy to say that when you have nothing of production.
Well, I can tell you if they were here, if they signed all those guys, our payroll would be much higher and we'd be much worse. So that's what I mean when it's the right call. Like, Javi Baez looks terrible in a Tigers uniform. I would rather have all of the outfielders that the Cubs have now over Kyle Schwarber. I would Anthony Rizzo, maybe the one that I want. Like Michael Busch looks pretty stinking good. He's one of the front runners for Rookie of the Year this year. But we've struggled not having a first baseman, and Anthony Rizzo's been okay, but Chris Bryant hasn't been on the field. Like I just don't know what. Are you suggesting to me that if we signed all those guys, the Cubs would be better now than they are now? No, they wouldn't be.
What I'm suggesting to defend the market of signing some guys, again, depends on what they're asking for, clearly. If it's a long-term deal, so what? Maybe you can't consider that. But I do think that there's this notion from time to time that it's always like you're going to outsmart the system. You got 3 or 4 guys that ultimately have got you to the promised land, and then essentially it's like, you know what? We're going to try to be smart here. We're not going to re-sign all these guys. And then since that's happened, there's really nothing that has come up of it. That's all.
Listen.
Like, are we going to kill the Phillies for signing Castellanos when they got to the World Series?
Listen, I'm just giving you.
I've not seen a World Series in my entire lifetime. I'm just giving you
the Cubs cut ties because this is what happened. First year, they won 97 games, went to the NLCS. Second year, they win 100 games. They go win the World Series. Third year, they win the NL Central, win 95 games, go to the NLCS. Fourth year, they win 92 games. They get bounced in the wild card round after getting bounced in game 163 against the Brewers. Fifth year, they don't make the postseason. They collapse in September. Sixth year, it's COVID. They win the Central. They don't score a run in the postseason games. Year after that, they lose 12 straight games at the end of June in the one final run in the Sun, and then they just go, all right, let's abandon ship. So it was a decline. And they made the right moves. I think across the board, Chris Bryant isn't very good anymore. Javi Baez isn't very good anymore. Anthony Rizzo's more of the same. Wilson Contreras, okay. Kyle Schwarber's okay. Like, if they would have signed these guys to $100 million deals across the board, the Cubs wouldn't be very good, and they had an astronomical payroll. It's not about smarting the system. We have the benefit of looking in the past and saying that if we would have done that, the team wouldn't be very good now, and it'd be an incredible payroll. It'd be a very high payroll.
Then at some point, though, what do you think? What? That's fair. I mean, I can't sit here and get into the knee deep of the Chicago Cubs, but I just think that there's times, and it just seems like we have polar opposites of what people think that franchises should do.
Big contracts aren't a bad thing. Like the Jason Hayward contract was fine, $160 million, whatever they had. He had a heck of a speech in the 2016 Game 7. That was the largest speaking fee ever. Like I'm not against big contracts. I'm just looking in hindsight and saying that it worked. Similar to how you can look in hindsight and say that it worked that the Reds didn't re-sign Nick Castellanos, that the Reds traded away Jesse Winker, that the Reds, like all these things, you can do this in hindsight and it worked out.
You can't. Here's where I will be hesitant in saying I don't think you can say it worked out until you actually do something. That's where there's this disconnect for me. Unless you capitalize on what money you saved or whatever transition you did or whatever it is, until you actually do the damn thing, you don't really. It doesn't mean it quote unquote worked out. Is all I'm getting at.
Okay.
I'm going to say
would
this.
you rather have Jesse Winker or Jake Fraley and Brandon Williamson at this very moment?
Of course, I'm going to say that I'd rather have Jake Fraley and Brandon Williamson
and Connor Phillips.
And Connor Phillips.
That's
a good trade. Yes,
that worked out.
I'm not. But my point is this: you can't sit here and continue to fly flags like you won something when you haven't ever won anything. That's all I'm suggesting.
I don't think anyone's flying flags. I think they're just looking in hindsight and saying that these were good moves. In hindsight, you can do that. You can retroactively look in the past and say it worked.
But that's easy to say because you don't know what you would have gotten 100% if they would have stayed. That's my point. You never get that opportunity. You don't know. And again, I know that I'm going to sound like I'm just trying to be fair. Okay. I'm not suggesting that they should have signed Castellanos. I'm arguing the other side of it because there is a certain population that isn't smart enough to be able to do what I'm getting ready to do because they essentially all they ever do is scream and they're negative and etc. But I'm going to defend them a little bit here. Is that if you can't suggest to me that if they would have brought back Castellanos, and I know I'm going to get killed for saying this out loud, but my point, hopefully you can see through the little blaring thing that I'm getting ready to say as a bigger picture. You don't know if they would have kept. Now, you're going to laugh, but you don't know if they would have kept Winker. You don't know if they'd have kept Suarez. You don't know if they'd have kept Castellanos. You don't know if they would have kept that core group of guys that you could argue was one of the teams that got them to the postseason the last time they were there. They couldn't have ended up doing something this city hasn't done since I've been alive.
Okay, so let me ask you.
So that's my point.
You're right. You can't do that, but I can ask you a simple question. Knowing everything you know now, 3 years later, where after the trades have been done, would you rather have signed Nick Castellanos and kept that core together, or be where you're at now? Where would you rather be?
I would.
We can do that in hindsight. We could say that it was a good move. We could say that I'd rather be where we're at now than run with those guys.
I 100% agree with that. Yes. However, all I was trying to point out was that you can't always claim that you won something when nothing ever really actually has changed. That's all. That's all. If my main point is this, is that if you're going to brag about how much money you saved with Will Benson, right? And that's fine. Then okay, if we piecemeal together 2, 3, 4 deals that didn't work out, are we allowed then to make fun of the fact that we saved all this money to waste it? I'm just throwing out a hypothetical. If Jamie Candelario doesn't pick it up a little bit and he doesn't play well, that's great. I'm glad we found a way to outsmart the system and save some money. But if you go out and you sign a guy like Mike Moustakas, what's it matter? It doesn't. It's irrelevant. You save money to waste it over here. So my point is like maybe I'm trying to say to the both sides, if we could just stop throwing spade after spade after spade or bullet after bullet after bullet at each other about how this guy's not this and this guy's not that. I'm never going to get on the Philadelphia Phillies for making a horrible decision of signing Nick Castellanos when they ended up getting to the World Series. And you could say part of the reason they got to the World Series was because of him. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying you're defending the opposite. I'm just pointing out that both sides have a little merit to what they're dealing with.
Right.
Maybe some more than the other.
You can look at things and go that just because it works out for the Phillies, like if they would have won a World Series with paying Kyle Schwarber and Nick Castellanos all the money that they're paying, then you can say, hey, that money worked for you. Like that happened for you. That's good. You did the right thing. You won a World Series. But that doesn't then make the Reds in the wrong for not signing those guys. That then doesn't make the Reds in the wrong for trading away those guys. There can be situations that work out for both parties. And going back to the Cubs, like, listen, if the Yankees, who've been to the ALCS, Rizzo got to play in an ALCS, if the Yankees would have won a World Series and that trade worked for the Yankees, I forget what we got for Anthony Rizzo on that trade, but if that player turns out to be for the Cubs, then both parties can be true. Like, just because it works for them doesn't mean it disqualifies working for you. Just because if Nick Castellanos wins a World Series with the Phillies, that doesn't make it the wrong call for the Reds. Both things can be true.
That's fair. And I think one side of the aisle, or whatever, we will sit here and play both sides of the aisle on the people that obviously are upset that the guys never get re-signed, and they always continue to find ways in which essentially you have to trade or you have to let them go. You hear the jokes from a certain population of the fan base that it's like, oh, I'm not going to get excited about them anyway. They'll end up getting traded. They're not going to be here long term. That is more of an indictment on where Major League Baseball is as a whole and how the monetary means come about, the financial discrepancies that exist within Major League Baseball than it is of the Cincinnati Reds. And that's my big – if we wanted to get onto a subject that obviously ends up being the real issue, the crux of the issue, it's that. It's that not all things are equal. And you're basically trying to win a national championship. And Reds fans might not like to hear this, or they might not agree with this, but we're trying to win the national championship at the University of Cincinnati in football.
Listen, man, you're getting awfully close to comrade territory. You're getting awfully close to the hammer and sickle trace. You're getting there.
I'm saying that, you know what? No one wants to make out to be Major League Baseball doesn't have a problem or it's not a big deal because maybe I'll be made an idiot of this over time. Maybe it's because of the look at how many champions the Major League Baseball has had, and look how many champions the NFL has had. You know, this team's won this many Super Bowls in the last 15 years, and the Major League Baseball has never had that. Nobody wants to admit that there's a huge discrepancy and a huge issue in Major League Baseball until the problem probably sitting right in front of our face in the Dodgers, the Mets, the Yankees, the Cubs, and you could list this 5 or 6 teams, right? The Rangers win the World Series the next 15 to 20 years.
Listen, man, I'm on board. I'm a comrade, brother. Hammer and sickle it away. Let's go. Yeah, I mean, it is a problem. Not everyone gets to drive a jet ski. Only the rich do. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, I'm on board.
That's not true because the rich actually will they'll lease the jet ski and or rent the jet ski for just an hour. You get it for just an hour, so you poors can actually have a chance to have a little bit of fun. That's what you got to do. That's what you got to do. I've done it from time to time. I felt like, you know what, man, am I making a right financial decision in my life by riding this, what are they called, banana boats out there off of a cruise ship?
Listen,
$30 right down the tube for 30 minutes. And I thought, you know what, though? I had fun. And you know what? That's what life's about. It's having fun. We'll try to be that as a Reds fan. And we'll talk a little bit more about the Reds and whatever else is on our mind right after this on 1410 Wing AM. All right, we are back. Some are saying better than ever. Some are saying that's the best segment we've had in weeks.
That's what many are saying.
That's what they're all saying. I can see it in the chat. They love it. Brian B., big fan.
I just don't like. Listen, you can call me a negative fan. I certainly am that. I overreact. I get down on guys I shouldn't get down on too early in the season. I get it. My whole thing is I don't want to hear the victory lap tour when a move that is objectively good, and when I say objectively good, when you try to sign somebody to a contract, that's objectively a good move usually. It just the act of signing players is good. That's a good thing. Trying to win games is good. Spending money in baseball when you have the Yankees who has a payroll of $1 trillion, that's good. So that's what I want to see. You can go on your victory laps. You can do it. But it's been a Jesse Winker slander fest in our group chat, in our YouTube chat. And it's just like, I don't know. And certainly Jake Fraley moved across the country too, and he's been very successful as a Cincinnati Red. Shout out to Jake Fraley. But I do think there is a goalpost when you're moving it. I'm really good in Cincinnati. I'm comfortable here. My family lives here. My wife, my child, we're all here. We're comfortable. And then we're like, oh, yeah, out of the blue, we're trading you to Seattle. And I'm like, yeah, you can struggle a little bit there. So that's just my whole point there. I keep seeing the Jesse Winker slander, and I had to say something.
Well, the thing is that, you know, humans don't really play this game. And I think that's the part of that's the part of baseball sometimes that I lose interest in getting so deep into the weeds on this. And it's like I just want to go to the ballpark sometimes and maybe I'll be a casual fan. I can just watch guys play the game. I can understand that maybe, there's a certain way that the game's been played for a certain amount of time that makes the game enjoyable to watch. The shift, right? When you get knee deep into all this, the shift, obviously it works. I get it. It does. It makes sense. This is why they banned it. But point is like, it's almost like just because Jesse Winker struggled with Seattle now, then we champion around acting like we've conquered something. We've conquered nothing. I'm just saying, like, to be fair, we've not done anything that has been relevant that's worth celebrating about until you actually do it. It'd be like us sitting here saying, man, we are so smart. We came up with a show topic that's so incredibly intelligent. Let's start doing that. And then all of a sudden, we do it, and it's a little bit better than the other segment. But the truth is, we still don't get anywhere.
I think your guys' bigger problem is, this is, once again, on the periphery of Reds fandom, you guys got to stop cannibalizing yourselves. Like, you guys put yourselves in situations where no one wins ever. Ever. You make a good trade. Objectively, we can look in hindsight and say the Jesse Winker thing is a good trade. But instead of just saying, like, hey, we got some pretty good players for this player that's not performing very well, you've got to dunk on the people that wanted to keep Jesse Winker. And the same thing can be true the other way, right? Like when there's people going like, hey, I don't think Jonathan India has a place on this roster going forward. And then people are like, whoa, what? And then Jonathan India plays well for a week, and they go, you guys are all idiots. I told you, Jonathan. Like, what do you mean you want to get rid of it? You guys cannibalize yourself.
That's part of the internet, though, right? I don't think that's real life. I don't think that's real life. I think that there's
Bengals fandom all the time. Sometimes with the
that's because you know why that is. That's because you actually have a league that's worth a shit. Got to bleep that out for the radio. What's that? 11:35 on your phone dial. But that's what I'm saying. You don't get that in the NFL because you don't have a situation where you have to lose guys. Like, okay, for instance, Joe Burrow, right? If the league was so catastrophically ridiculous to where you couldn't re-sign Joe Burrow, if they traded Joe Burrow, because hypothetically that's the right move to make because you just can't keep a guy that's that expensive, you don't have the payroll to be able to afford it, I got news for you. You'd have half this damn city right now arguing whether that they should have kept Joe Burrow or whether they should have traded him for some prospects they could be drafting right now. That's a fact.
Listen, I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, it's an unfair game that these teams get to compete at a higher clip, but like I've said, like the greatest luxury in sports isn't baseball teams that get to spend 3 times as much than the next baseball. Like the Dodgers aren't in a better chance to win a championship than a team that has an elite quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, because that's the greatest luxury in sports. That's the greatest luxury in sports. That's why when you look at the NFL, it's harder to win a championship until you get one of those guys than it is. Like it's harder to win a championship without an elite quarterback than it is for the Kansas City Royals to win a World Series.
The other thing, too, that I find interesting about the numbers and obviously the way in which you can try to go about being smart, isn't everybody playing by the same game now? Like, you're not getting over on anybody anymore. There isn't somebody that's like, oh, yeah, this isn't, again, Moneyball gets made fun of and all that, and rightfully should, by the way. The more you think about really. Moneyball.
There's teams that still go against the grain, like the Phillies, for instance, are a team that kind of go against the grain. Like their guys, they say, hey, we don't care about defense. We'll give all these guys giant contracts, even though like they don't show to be worth that money because their value isn't there. They've gone against the grain.
So the Phillies have basically decided, you know what, money's just
we're gonna get
money.
some boppers, baby.
But I'm saying that what they realized is their ownership group, and some of it, again, this is where people want to pile on the Castellinis. But if the Castellinis had the same opportunities or the same amount of money coming in as the Philadelphia Phillies, then maybe you could argue they could be the same, but maybe they wouldn't. I'm saying if you swapped ownership groups from Philadelphia to Cincinnati and Cincinnati to Philadelphia, maybe they both do the same exact thing opposite ways. My point is, though, is what you're saying is the Phillies have decided, you know what? it's just money. If we're going to burn money on the back end of something and we realize that, we're going to waste money, it doesn't hurt them at all. That's where like the Castellanos thing, I guess, again, eventually it catches up to you. You would like to think it would catch up to you, but at some point, I got news for you. There's going to be an ownership group where it doesn't. There's going to be an ownership group where it just doesn't matter. And I guess I have a bigger problem with Major League Baseball the more we talk today, is just that eventually you get to a spot where, again, like the Dodgers, maybe they did overspend for Shohei. Maybe they did. But you know what? It doesn't matter because they got money. They got more of it. What happens when, again, I'm going to throw out another hypothetical.
Trace,
I have
a book for you to read.
Somebody that's in Live, right? Let's just say the Saudi money decides, again, maybe Major League Baseball wouldn't allow it or something along those lines. But that's the type of stuff I'm talking about. What happens when there's an endless amount of money? It seems like we're all watching a sport that the deck is rigged. And it's been rigged.
Once again,
if we want to convince ourselves that the Diamondbacks are going to be the saving grace of baseball, and that's why we should all not care about Major League Baseball's discrepancies, be my guest. But I got news for you. When Elly De La Cruz, Matt McClain, Hunter Green, let's just say Connor Phillips, let's just say they're all spectacular, fantastic, then you got to rinse and repeat. And that's not fun. That's not fair. And I'm sorry that I have to be that guy, but at some point, the discrepancies are what they are. What happens if Elly De La Cruz wins two MVPs right before he ends up becoming a free agent? Is he going to sign with the Cincinnati Reds? That's a problem. You can sit here and act like Major League Baseball doesn't have a problem. They have a major problem. And hopefully somebody decides to fix it. I doubt it. But the NFL is king, and it'll continue to stay king. And one of the reasons why is because every team in the NFL right now actually believes and thinks that they have a chance to win a Super Bowl in a reasonable amount of time. I can tell you right now, the Rockies fans, they have zero hope.
Because they signed Chris Bryant.
Tie it all back. No, but to switch over to the series, this series against the Phillies, the Reds look damn good against the Phillies in Philadelphia. I think there's a chance the Reds win this series, and if they win this, good. You were gonna interrupt?
I was gonna let you finish your point. Then I got a thing to say.
If they win this series, if we win 3-1, we being the Reds, it's unprofessional to say we. But if we win the series 3-1, I'm gonna be buying a World Series future on the Cincinnati Reds.
If you win 3-1, you know what you win?
What's that?
You win the season tiebreaker over the Philadelphia Phillies. So that's what's on the line is tiebreakers, guys. It's already April, but let's talk about the tiebreakers.
Your trolls have been very funny lately. I have to give you a lot of. If you don't know Reed, he's on Twitter.
I trolled you.
Reed Mouse Radio.
I don't know if you saw that.
Which one?
I troll. I'm an equal opportunity troller. Equal opportunity troller.
Was it the one I responded with the video?
No, I'll pull it out.
Sometimes he doesn't at me, and sometimes I don't see the trolls in time. So whatever Reed's troll was, I'm sure it was very good. But he's being very good at it. So shout out to Reed, he's improved. Casey, what was the atmosphere like? I saw it was a decent.
Deleted it.
Oh, I saw there was a decent crowd there on Sunday.
Yeah,
for it being chilly and whatever.
Yeah, it was a pretty decent crowd. Good reception. I think it was just a little dead because the game was pretty much dead for most of it. It was one inning of really good baseball. The rest of it, well, depends on what you think of really good baseball in your mind. But it was a no-hitter for the Reds up until that sixth inning. And a good turnout at least. I think
that's what I wanted. I just wanted a good atmosphere. I want people to support. And this kind of goes back to what Trace was saying earlier. The Phillies are going to sell out most of their games, and the city of Philadelphia loves it. The Reds, and then again, it's Nick Kirby brings it up. It's a lot of because of location, but not a lot of fans come on the weeknights, and that's just how it's always going to be. And maybe that prohibits the Castellinis from spending money. I would argue that. If you're going to buy a Major League Baseball team, you should do it with the intent to win and spend money. But others might disagree with me on that sentiment, but that's to each their own. My point is being the Reds are going to beat the Philadelphia Phillies. The Reds are fine. Everybody calm down. Are you concerned, as we have a minute left, are you concerned with Will Benson?
No, I'm not concerned with Will Benson, no. I mean, listen, I think that we can't continue to do this every week, worry about one guy, then he gets a couple hits, and then next thing you know, he's one of the better players on the team. Will Benson got off to a great start this year. Was he going to continue to do what he did when he, first few weeks? No. But is he as bad as he's been the last 2 weeks? No. He'll figure it out.
I think Will Benson has ironically been like what people thought Elly was Game 3 when he had the 2-error game. He leads the team in strikeouts. He's hitting 180. Struggling, but he'll be fine. Will Benson's fine, and I still think he should play every day. I think he's better than Bubba Thompson. Shout out to Bubba Thompson. I'm not going to pile on. But there was a fly ball hit directly at him, and he missed it.
Yeah, that was one play. Guys make mistakes.
Cherry pick. But
Guys make mistakes. They're human, after all.
What a way to end it. What a way to end it after that.
Yeah. So just maybe when they, leave places and go to other places, things might affect them, and they might not do what they would have done somewhere else. Who knows? We'll never know. And you know what? We will never know. But you get to see Castellanos play this weekend. If you're a huge fan of his, when he was in Cincinnati, you go down to the ballpark, maybe give him a little bit of a standing ovation when he comes to bat. Let's just hope he continues to do what he's been doing all year, which is be the worst player in Major League Baseball. But you never know. It's early in the season. We shall find out. It's been a good show. Hopefully we find a way to win another baseball game, survive and advance the Cincinnati Reds. I'm not here to say that they are an average team quite yet. I got to see some more. Hopefully they can find a way to get in the win column tonight. They host the Philadelphia Phillies. Go down to the ballpark if you can. Use the Game Time app. Love you. Got Kenner and Kev next on 1410 Wing AM.
Boom, back. What was your troll?
All right, here's my troll. You didn't see it because you didn't like it. It was a troll, equal opportunity troller. This is the tweet I put out. I said, if you have a platform and you suggested that Elly De La Cruz should be in AAA, you should be removed from that platform.
Did you actually say that?
No, I didn't say that. I said CES. I said CES could be sent down.
Some are saying that you said to send him to Florence Freedom, but that's just you being
well.
Trying
That
to
was
be funny.
If anybody who reads that and doesn't think it's a joke, your brain is broken, and that's on you. Yeah, I was a little frustrated when Elly had the 2-error game. Should I have been frustrated? Probably not. It's 162 games, and that game, when we look back at it, is going to be literally nothing. Absolutely nothing. But guess what? That just goes to show what kind of a baseball fan I am. I'm going to watch every game. I love my team. I'm going to criticize my team, and that's okay. We all live in the same earth, and we're all going to do our things differently. I watch Reds differently than Nick Kirby watches it.
Speaking of that, Nick Kirby got on me for doing my tiebreaker troll thing. Here's the thing about tiebreakers, and I mean this, like we talk about like
I think this is going to be another troll.
Well, no, I swear to God, when we talk about like analytics, Wobicon, shifts, all this stuff, spin rate, launch angle, taking you out of the game, those don't take me out of the game. For some reason, the least sexy thing I've ever heard sports talk show talk about is we've got the tiebreaker. When John Sadak said through a microphone, and they have the tiebreaker over the Cubs, that
sounds like he's bitter.
Dude, that's there's nothing. It sounds like soccer. Like, oh yeah, we tied. Got the tiebreak. Like that's
I love that
just
shit.
to talk about something that just could do less for me.
Don't you think it's relevant though? I mean, I think it's relatively relevant when you're in a pennant race.
So is Wobicon. So is exit velocity. So are all these things. Those are relevant. You don't like hearing about them. I don't like hearing about tiebreakers. That just sounds. Oh my god. That just rubbed me the wrong way last September.
Because you guys didn't have the tiebreaker. Obviously, you were upset about
tiebreakers.
You were on the losing side of the tiebreaker.
Congratulate! Hey, good luck on winning the tiebreaker.
Well, we've won just as much as the Cubs have won since they got rid of all those guys that you're proud about.
Huh?
We've won just as many playoff games as the Cubs have since they got rid of all those guys that you were happy to get rid of.
What is that? What are you proving there?
I just said a statement. I mean, you want me to give the definition?
Well, you said it to prove something. Like, what are you trying to prove? that the Reds have been on the same par as the Cubs over the last 3 years. Let's push it back to 5 years when the Cubs won an NL Central. Let's push it back to a little further than that when the Cubs went to 3 NLCSs.
How far do we want to push it back?
Well, I want to push it back to
That's a fair question. That's a fun debate.
Let's push it back to your conscious life. At what point do you think you were conscious? About 6, 5?
Correct.
So about 1992.
Yes.
I was conscious at about 2002, 2002-ish.
Right.
And you have an extra 10 years.
I do.
In your extra 10 years,
stray.
who do you think has more enjoyment from their favorite baseball team?
Well, I mean, listen. There's no doubt that you as a Cubs fan has probably had more fun. Yes, there's no doubt about it.
Okay.
But baseball's baseball, and the good news is
I just don't know why you started
comparing
comparing the Cubs to the Reds. Like I don't. Why did you bring?
Well,
that in
you
there?
were bringing up the fact that you were just making fun of the fact that there was a tiebreaker. I thought that's a very relevant thing when there's 10 games left in the season and it's you're separated by a game, and if you end up tying, then one team wins and one team loses.
It's almost exactly like the opposite of tying in soccer because it's a breaker.
Actually, it's not a tie. It would be that the one team wins.
Ooh.
Seems relevant.
Yeah.
It would almost be like this, Reed. If you're in the 6th inning of a game, and you know that if you're tied in the 9th inning, that one team automatically gets a run at the 9th inning and they win the game. It's almost like in the 6th inning, you should probably bring that up. You should be like, hey, just so you know, if we're tied in the 9th inning, this team actually wins, even though it's tied, because they have.
Okay.
Wait for it. The tiebreaker.
Okay, listen. I'm just gonna say I don't like hearing about tiebreakers. The phrase tiebreaker makes me want to gouge my eyes.
Tiebreaker.
Similar to how you don't like Wobegon
Tiebreaker?
and exit velocity.
Just sing it the best way you think you can.
Continue with your thought. I'll interrupt you.
You know what's a good tiebreaker is winning more games than the other team. That's a good tiebreaker.
Do you take back your comment? I found this on Twitter the other day. It was from August 14th, 2023. Do you take back your comment that Elly De La Cruz is essentially Javier Baez?
Javi Baez has been a much better baseball player than Elly De La Cruz throughout his career.
But I think you said that was like his ceiling. I think.
Listen, man, I got to troll.
Do you think that's the case now?
Do I think that Elly De La Cruz?
Do you think Ellie's trajectory is higher than what you said in August when you compare him to Javier Baez?
When it's all said and done, do I think we'll make it nice and easy? Will he have more WAR than Javi Baez through his career is done? Probably. But Javi Baez was a top 3 player in the National League for a 3-year span. So,
has there been a bigger fall off for a player in Major League
I would say Chris
Baseball?
Bryant was a much bigger fall off. Much greater fall off.
Javier Baez doesn't look competitive. Nick Castellanos is certainly making a run at the title.
Do you think the Dodgers have a chance of having buyer's remorse, and/or they will be impacted by the fact that they spent that much money and it didn't work out? Just saying, if the arm they got from Japan and
Yamamoto?
What's his name?
Yamamoto?
Yes.
And Shohei?
If those guys, Shohei doesn't seem like he's going to be a fall off the face of the earth type of guy, but I'm just saying if for instance, if they struggle, is there any chance, or they just wipe it clean?
See, here's the thing about the Dodgers that people don't give enough credit for. The Dodgers, they always have young studs.
Their farm system is incredible.
Right, it's the best. They won 5 straight Rookie of the Years back in the '90s, and it's just Clayton Kershaw's getting to the end of his career. Oh, they got Bobby Miller now. They just keep pulling these guys.
Cody
up.
Bellinger, Michael Busch.
They can get rid of Corey Seager, who's a phenomenal player. They don't sign Corey Seager, and it really doesn't hurt them.
What's the point? What's the rationale there? Is there been someone that's documented that? Is it largely analytic based? I'm assuming.
The Dodgers? The Dodgers have always had great team.
I'm saying as far as the way in which they're able to get these young guys, or is it just scouting? They have a better scouting department than everybody else.
My guess is they have a better
spend more
scouting.
money.
I'm sure money has to do with that too. And again, that's why the Dodgers are one of the greatest organizations in baseball.
Michael Busch, the Cubs first baseman, who is I think 3rd best odds to win the Rookie of the Year right now. The Dodgers just traded him away because they have no spot for him. He's a top 20 prospect in Major League Baseball, and they're just he's not good enough to play for us. So just see it. That's crazy. That is crazy. No other team can do that. No other team can do that. Unless the Braves have a top 10 guy at one of their positions that they're not ready, that they've got pretty much locked up.
Dodgers are a wagon. The only good news is that they've only had one World Series to show for it. That's the only thing I can take away.
See, that's the point, right? We can keep looking at it like it's such a disadvantage. I'm not discrediting that the Reds are in a disadvantage compared to the Dodgers. But at the end of the day, all these teams that you think of spend all this money, the New York Yankees, the Dodgers, and over the last 15 years, not a whole lot of success. You know who has been successful are the teams that bring up a lot of young talent and then supplement it through a few signings.
Well, how many? We say not a lot of success. How many wins have the Dodgers had? Playoff wins have the
Well,
Dodgers
I
had
guess
in the last
if
decade?
it's-
How many wins have the Reds have? How many wins have the Pirates have? How many wins have the Rays had? How
Yeah,
many wins? I mean, just
listen. The
get on
Dodgers
with it.
have won the NL West for 13 out of the last 14 years or something crazy.
It's almost like saying that since Baden baseball hasn't won a state championship, that they're not very good or something. Like then it's all irrelevant. It's like they're one of the best programs in the state of Ohio.
We swim around this topic a lot on this show. Sometimes it's you don't have a championship to prove for it,
Right.
and sometimes it's you're competing a lot. So I mean we just gotta pick a lane and stick to that one because I'm cool with either way. Like if we want to do it's championship or bust for teams, I'll do that. We can do that. But if it's just hey this team's gonna compete for a 10-year span, we can do that. I prefer to do that one.
I think it just depends on what narrative you're going for. That's the lane that
is
most
true.
people pick.
That
I
is
mean,
true.
if you're looking to try to make an argument
If
that
you
your
wanna-
team's
if you
been
wanna
successful,
tr-
they
if
haven't
you-
won a championship.
If you
you're a
want to troll
Bengals
the
fan,
Bengals like you've done from time
Exactly.
to time, like you've been good over the last 3 years, but what do you have to show for it? I think you've said that before, while also simultaneously defending the Dodgers.
well, at
'cause they've
times
been
you
the-
needle people. I think there's times where you needle people. You let them feel their own pain from time to time. Listen, I mean, when you're a Reds fan, you can become jaded. It's not hard to do. I mean, it's not hard to do at all.
Negative Reds fans like myself, we live in our own
By the
world.
way, the Cubs did not. The Reds did not have the tiebreaker over the Reds last year.
The what?
The first tiebreaker. We're talking about tiebreakers, like what
Yeah.
get you in the postseason. The first one is your win-loss, so they actually didn't have that. Cubs had more wins and less losses. That's the first tiebreaker.
Womp womp. Listen. As a negative Reds fan, all I hope is that my team is competitive. I want September baseball to mean something. That's all I've ever wanted. And unfortunately for me, more than not, those months, those September months, have meant nothing in my life.
As a Bengals fan, it is crazy because I told people before we got Joe Burrow, like we were like gonna tank for Joe Burrow, and I was like, guys, I just like watching the Bengals every Sunday compete. Like I like sitting in my little chair. I like turning on the TV and watching the Bengals just compete. And I don't want to see them lose. And then it turned out that it was probably the right thing to tank. And that's what it feels like sometimes. Like I'm sure with the Reds, like you just want them to be playing in September, meaningful baseball. Is that a decade of 80 wins, 84 wins?
Yeah.
Or would you rather have 3 years of 95 wins?
I'd rather have the 3 years. But we can't get those either, so we'll take my 80 wins and I'll move on, I guess. We'll see. I just want a championship. Is that too much? Super
No,
Bowl?
it's not. And all I want is it to be a somewhat semi-fair playing field. Like it just seems
You'll
like
never
you're
have
rooting-
that, though.
I know, but it just seems like when you're rooting for. That's sad. Then I guess what I'll say is that's sad. If this is a professional major league organization, and you can't find a way to try to make the basically the inefficiencies of your league better, then what are we doing? Is what I would ask.
I mean, you have just so we're clear, if we're going to make fun of the MLB, we have a franchise moving to Sacramento in a stadium that fills 8,000 people. And we want to be considered a serious sports league.
Guys, I mean,
that's
like
the biggest joke of all time.
in the National League over the last 10 years, we've had 8 different pennant winners. 8 in 10 years. In
Well,
the
I mean,
in the
my
AFC,
point is
we've had
that-
3. We've had 3. 4 Broncos.
It's also easier. You can say it's easier to make the playoffs in the NFL and harder to win a Super Bowl. It's harder to make the playoffs in the MLB.
They're making it easier though. They have done.
Yeah,
that.
they're giving chances. You want to talk about that? Like they're giving more chances for the Reds. By opening up the playoffs to where they allow more teams, that's giving chances for the Diamondbacks to make it. That's giving chances for the Phillies, who I'm pretty sure were the last team in when they went to the World Series. Like,
Do you think it's fair? Like, as much as the Castellinis get crushed.
They should get crushed for the record.
Can I? I'm not defending them. I'm
just making sure because it sounded like you were going to start sway on their side.
No, I'm not swaying on their side. I just want to try to paint this out a little bit. So when they first took over the team, right, they suggested that the championships were a priority, being in the communities were a priority. They have that letter that people reference back to, right? They put that letter out there where championships are our main focus.
Bringing championship baseball back.
Don't you think by the time when they actually purchased the team to now that the financial landscape as a whole has changed significantly?
Yeah.
Like I'm just saying, like it just seems like at some point pride would get in the way of selling, maybe, but it just feels like at the beginning, and I'm not saying this to be. It seemed like that was a clear, genuine intention. No. I mean, they signed Joey Votto. They signed Homer Bailey. They missed on obviously Homer a little bit, and he got hurt. That doesn't. I'm not blaming Homer. I'm just saying that's part of it.
Yeah.
They did go out and whatever it was, 19, 20, where they go out and they get Moustakas, they get Castellanos, they find
Puig and all those guys.
But it's almost like some people are going to argue though that they just kind of just do enough to get by, and it's almost like a game of just saying like, let's make them think we care, and all we really care about is winning. All we really care about is making money. And I'm just trying to play devil's advocate of saying, I don't know if that's the case as much as it is they just genuinely don't have the money
to do what
they need to do.
Well, here's
the Mike Minor deal was exactly what you're saying. They did the bare minimum. They let Wade Miley go for the same exact price as them taking on Mike Minor's contract. They brought in Mike Minor.
When teams exclusively, like, you can't win a championship without having good young players. You can't.
Correct. You need the core.
You can't do it without that young core. Even teams like the Astros who have been a wagon, they had to do it. They had to wait their turn. They had to wait till Jose Altuve, Carlos Correa, and Alex Bregman were ready to roll.
Yep. Braves, same thing.
Braves, they had to wait. Like, it's not like they were just signing these guys out of the woodworks. The reason that the Dodgers are always good is because they constantly have young guys to continually rep through. If the Dodgers had nobody young coming through the ranks and all their big free agent signings weren't working out, they'd sell it all and start over. They would. You got to have young guys, and that's where the Reds have gotten it wrong. It's not because they're unwilling to spend $700 million on Shohei Ohtani. That hurts, right? That's definitely a shot. But the reason they haven't contended recently is because they haven't had enough young guys like they do right now, like they did a decade ago with Jay Bruce, Joey Votto, Homer Bailey, and that crew. That's where they're at. They've got to wait their spot. That's why they were bad for a decade, was because they didn't have enough of those young guys to compete. It wasn't because they weren't going out and signing a Jason Hayward.
But I think that there's obviously there's the rationale of signing players for a lot of money, and that's one way to show that's one way to show that you care about winning. The other way to show that you care about winning is something that nobody probably gets a chance to see, and that's how much money you're spending on resources to get the things that you're talking about. How many scouts you have, what your analytic department looks like, all of these things that we're not privy to being able to see on the outside is 100% being done by franchises that clearly are spending a significant amount of money. And I'm not suggesting that for a single second, that if you're a small market, you don't have enough money to be able to compete in that field.
I can promise you that if this Reds team, if this current Reds core proves that they are good enough to be contenders, they just need a piece or two, the Reds will go out and get it. And I'm not talking Jeimer Candelario. I'm not talking Nick Martinez. I'm talking big signings. But they've got to prove that they're better than just an 81, 82 win team, and they haven't done that yet. And they only had one chance to do it. Like it's not like they're just meandering around this for a while. It was last year was the first go round, and there was a lot to prove. So they said, hey, we'll put a lot of money here. We'll put some money towards building this roster up. And if this team continues to show that they can win the NL Central, that they can make it and win a playoff series, then you will see the Reds put a lot of money towards their team. I truly believe that.
I think it's fair. I think as a Reds fan, it's a weird spot to be, because I think that when I sit, and obviously you have Kirby and Spalding kind of on one side of the aisle. On the other side of the aisle, again, we won't name names, but we know what that is at the end of the day. We do. I mean, we don't need to play games. We all know what that looks like. I just continue to hopefully try to find myself in the middle of saying, like, what's the end goal? What's it ultimately end up looking like? And I will be lying if I said I don't get depressed by the landscape of what Major League Baseball as a whole looks like. Period. Now, maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe Nick Kroll, can fight his way through it. But I would say this. If Nick Kroll's doing something that's so much better than everyone else, I'm not an idiot. I know how business works. I know exactly what will happen. He's going to get bought. Someone's going to come in and say, oh, that looks good. I'm taking that. You know what we see it in? We see it in college football all the time. There's a reason that there's only like 5 teams that compete for national championships. And you know why? Because the landscape is shifted from financial success is the only thing that matters. If you got all the money, eventually guess what you get in life? You get most of the rewards.
I've got a book for you. I think you should read it, Trace. I
guess I'll read it. What should I read? What's it going to be called? Can I read? What's the name of it?
The author is Karl Marx. The book is called The Communist Manifesto.
Really?
Do you want it? Because you're speaking points from it.
I'm not. No, what I am suggesting is that it's clear and evident as to how. I'm not suggesting that's a bad thing. That's what you're trying to suggest. What I am saying is, if you are running a league, you have to find checks and balances in your league to try to make it competitive for all. If you want all to be able to care, to continue to care. That's all. Because I guess my point is that. We all are of a certain age. And when you get to another certain age in life, you realize and you look back, and sometimes you do realize that the people that are older than you know what? They have a point about certain things. Maybe they live long enough to know something that I don't. And I hate to say this, but Nick Kirby, I guarantee you, and he might not want to admit this, and Bryce and me and everyone else, if we go 25 more years, and I'm not saying this is that, I'm not rooting for this, but my point is this. This is my point. I'm going to end the show. My point is that I sympathize a little bit with some of the fans that are just negative all the time. Some of the fans that just are tired. Because if you are, again, you got to see the 70s, that helps. Mm-hmm. But if you are a fan of our age and you go another 20 years and there's nothing that comes out of it, do we not think for a single second that there's going to be basically a large portion of the Facebook Red group, if you want to call it that ends up just being us at some point? I think it would. I think it would. I'm just saying.
I'm a positive person. I think attitude's a choice more often than not. And I know that it hasn't been good. Hasn't been good for Reds fans over the last 30 years. But I don't see being a negative. I don't see what being negative accomplishes. So listen. You guys can make fun of me about whoever the Bengals draft on Thursday. I'll come in here Friday and I'll yap it up. I'll say, hey, this guy's gonna be great.
What if it's a running back?
Running back or edge rusher, I'd be a little perplexed. Or they draft a quarterback. Then I'm just like, all right, what are we doing here? But
what if we draft JJ?
He ain't gonna make it to 18, brother. He ain't gonna make it to 18. Listen, I don't know. I just don't know what being negative accomplishes. I truly do hold. While you guys are sitting here talking about how it's not fair and everything like that, if the Reds are competing, like if they prove that they are a team to be reckoned with in the National League and they have a legitimate shot to win the pennant, to win the Central, to win it all, the Reds will do what it takes. They will go out and buy that big piece that can put them over the edge. That will happen. But they've got to show that.
I don't think it will, but I get your sentiment.
Yeah, I don't know what that piece would be. I guess we'll have to find out. We'll have to wait and find out what that may be. All right, this has been a little bit of overtime. Box lunch coming up for members only. If you've not become a member yet, please consider doing so. It helps us out tremendously. We're going to do more and more stuff here relatively soon. Another nugget that I don't even know if you guys really know, but starting next Tuesday, we're going to take a couple-day hiatus around here. And the reason is we're going to try to do some things around the studio and mix it up and hopefully kind of not rebrand completely. That's not the plan, but try to do some things differently. And some of that has to do with the fact that we're going to try to do some more stuff for our members. So there's that. But we'll be back better than ever tomorrow. Hopefully the Reds find a way to win. Take care, everybody. Enjoy your day. Box lunch is next.